All right. So it's so nice to see you all. I know many of you guys have seen each other in person. Some of you may even have seen Sean and AJ at NAB this year, or maybe even a site visit from them. But this is the time we all get together and a chance for all of you to meet one another. So I love to see that so many of you have been to more than one symposium. But welcome. I'm Jeannie Clark, and you're joining us at our annual Web Checkout User Symposium. Thank you all for joining the Web Checkout team today. We're so excited to showcase what we've been up to the past year. Today, we'll also debut the June 2024 release, and we'll also share what to expect from Web Checkout for future releases. All right. I'd first like to take a moment and welcome our newest customers. Welcome all our new customers, but it's truly all of you, not just our new customers, every single one of you. If you can hear me, thank you all, because it is because of you that we get to do something so interesting and enjoyable every day. So from everyone at Web Checkout, thank you to all of you. We wouldn't be here without you. All right. So let's actually take a little journey down features past. So last year, the product has evolved to streamline processes and provide more information and features to the end users. So our efforts here are to improve the circulation experience for you, your operators, and all of your students. So here are the latest features of Web Checkout as of the March 2023 release. In that release, March 2023, you're able to create allocations and rapid return in any screen, anytime. We also launched project status, green light, yellow light, or unapproved. And today you'll hear from Moody College of Communications at the University of Texas at Austin and how they manage equipment usage for class projects with the current Greenlighting module. In July 2023, thanks to all of your new best friends at the School of Visual Arts, there's now staging features to prepare your order in advance of pickup. We know that's a very popular feature. And we've also expanded staging features in the latest June 2024 release, so you can add items to the reservation during the staging process. In December 2023, we heard from you and we added a calendar view of resource schedules in Patron Portal. And those with the certification and billing modules saw new features as well. Today, we're debuting the June 2024 release, which I'm calling the one with requests. There's certainly more than just requests, but just a nice succinct way to say it. We've been kind of on a Friends episode kick here. But AJ will be demoing new features this morning and what you can expect in this June 2024 release. Now, as for where the product is going, you'll hear about our Greenlighting development partnership from Sean and Lee also this morning. And then Lee will end our afternoon session and present what we're working on for the next release of this year. But we can't forget about the services. Services have upgraded too, and we're now offering one-on-one time with our implementation team. We've spent more time with our clients last year than ever before, providing deep dives into new features, training new student employees, cleaning up inventory data, and even providing insights into your operations through usage reports. So many of you have worked with Brittany, and if you haven't yet, you'll want to stay tuned to hear her session this afternoon, where she'll review what every Webco administrator should know. And we also offer Patron Portal and email branding services so that the look and feel matches your institution. Nicole from our customer care team will kick off this afternoon session and walk us through some handlebar helpers to enhance your emails. But sometimes you do have to let go to move forward. So last year we said goodbye to Timeline Scheduler and Web Checkout's founder, Eric Dodson, both adored by many of you. But change allows for space for new features, new ideas, and new leadership. Today, you'll hear from Web Checkout's new GM, Glenn Adams, whose experience and expertise in higher education and technology with under his leadership, actually, Web Checkout is able to really focus on its core purpose. And that's to provide all of you, our beloved customers, the tools and services to manage the equipment and processes so educators can educate and creators can create. So during our sessions today, if you have any questions, please do raise them in chat and we'll address them as time permits. But so sit back, please enjoy the next few hours with us. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Glenn. Glenn?
Thank you, Jean. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody that's attending today. I know your time is valuable, so I will try and make this fast and we'll get to the good stuff, right? But I did want to take the time to introduce myself and let you guys know a little bit about my background and what my vision is as we try and move forward and continue to make Web Checkout the valuable solution that you guys need it to be. I was in the Navy, and then when I got out, I started working at a university. I actually live in Auburn, Alabama. I worked at Auburn University in the IS Department of Facilities. So I worked out in the facility space. And so I got to learn a lot. I was there for 7.5 years. So I got to learn a lot about how a university runs, how we function with students, with buildings, with equipment, with assets. I understood about the purchasing process, and the things that we have to do to make sure that we're talking to the right people and we're building value. And we also understand the restrictions and limitations that we're under. Oh, John, give me a roll tide, darn. Wardy. But that was great, and it gave me a great insight. And then what I ended up doing is I ended up going to work for a software company called AssetWorks that makes facilities management software. Many of you have that software. Your facilities teams uses it every day. And when I first got there, we really were focusing on what we call design thinking. And I got mentored and got taught and worked in all different parts of that company for many years. And we were able to grow that software into a wonderful tool that offers a lot of value. But the biggest thing that I learned along the way was it was all about customer observation. That is really where we won, what made us different, what helped us, kind of separate ourselves from other competitors, to be honest with you. And it was, you got out there and you didn't just take the developers, throw them in a closet, give them some Mountain Dew and pizza and say, go build me a thing. Right? I mean, sometimes that's what people do, but we actually got out and we talked to the customers and we built real strong bonds and partnerships. And there was a good mutual level of trust because we knew that we weren't just going to go build a thing. We needed to build the thing that worked for them. And it had to be specific. It couldn't just be a general software that did A, B, and C. It also needs to do D, E, and F. And the way you do that is you have to get on site and watch and observe. And that's what we would do. We would go and say, when we're doing custodial, we would be there at 4:30 in the morning when they all showed up to work and go into the closets and getting their assignments and getting their materials. And that was how we learned what this solution, where do we fit in this journey of what you're trying to accomplish every day? And so that's once again what we're going to be doing here. And it's not that we're not already doing it. I think we've got a wonderful team, and they're very knowledgeable about all things when it comes to the circulation of the equipment and everything you guys do. But as we continue to want to build and solve more problems for you, we need to first understand that problem deeply and completely. And we need to understand where we fit, right? Not everything is a software solution, but where we do fit and where we can bring value, that's where we're going to be there. And so that's what I need from you guys, though. We're gonna be introducing these things. You'll hear us talk about some different acronyms. Might be a special interest group or development partnership or a customer advisory board. Right? We have a bunch of different methods that we could use. But the main thing that I want you to realize is this is us leaning in and getting into this partnership with you guys, and then you guys doing the same for us. Right. And then allowing us to come in and really talk about what the problems are and what your process is. What we want to do is understand that fully, be able to communicate that back out to the community, get people to agree and give us fill in other details to say, yeah, that's actually how we do it also, or have someone else say, well, we do it a little bit differently and here's where it's different. And so you get this group of people that are helping us really deeply understand a problem. Only then, when we get to that point, do we then prioritize features and go and build stuff. Right. And that it seems you might be sitting there going, well, of course, that's how you do it, right? But not everybody does it that way. You'd be surprised. A lot of people think they already understand the problem. And so they just go build something. And then you get it and you're like, well, this kind of works for me. It does most of what I need it to do, but I wish it did this. All this stuff, all these great ideas that people have, they come from watching people do things and trying to accomplish and talking to them about what they're trying to, what are their goals? At the end of the year, I want to be here. Every day when I do this stuff, this part's rough, right? How do we get there? And we're going to get there together, but a lot of it's going to come through this partnership that we're going to build together. Also, that means we have to be able to come on site. We've got to be able to travel. And so, we're going to have AJ out, we're going to have our development team, we're going to have Sean out, but it won't just be about coming and selling you something. It'll be coming and listening and watching and just being around. And while we can't hit every site, we're hoping that, people reach out to us and kind of come forward and say, hey, we want to be part of this. So, that's the goal. I'm very excited to be here. I think we have a great team. I think you're going to listen and hear from some great people today, both internally and externally. I really appreciate all the customer feedback and the people that are willing to give presentations with us. The more of these we can do, the better, I say, right? The more we can share with each other and build a community of like-minded people that want to solve the same problems, we can do it together. And it's great when you have a community like that, right? That's not really in direct competition with each other, right? They're all just trying to learn from each other and get better. We like to educate, right? So let's do that. Let's join together. A couple other things, as we go into it, we're obviously going to be focused on making things easier to use, right? But I also want us to be thinking about stuff problems we don't already solve today. Right. So not just doing the little things that we do already better, but where are the points where you're leaving our software to go somewhere else? What are the places where you do all this within Webcheckout, but then you stop and you flip over to this other screen? It's like, well, couldn't we just put that in Webcheckout and then you could just be in our software the whole time? Wouldn't that make it easier? Wouldn't it make it easier to have everything in one place? So those are some other things that we want to learn about. We want to know, where are you having to do kind of crazy workarounds? It's like, well, if I do this, then I have to go over here. And so we're gonna be listening and watching and trying to figure these things out. So we're not just tweaking around the edges. We're actually building entirely new solutions and new tools to make it even a broader portfolio of solutions for you to have. So I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to be great. I think also one of the things we think about when we want to do this, we want to communicate. We want to communicate, from you to you. We want to be able to understand who are the people that you need to communicate with internally as well, right? Not only the students, but what about the staff, right? What about the people that are part of larger scale workflows, that maybe don't use Webcheckout at all today, right? So you end up having to leave Webcheckout and then communicate with them via maybe it's email or some other system. Where is that? When is that? Could we get them to use Webcheckout? Would that make your life easier? Would it make their life easier? Right. So that's where we want to be. We want to understand every step, and that's where we're going to come and observe. All right. So I don't want to go on too much longer. I would love to see if anybody has any questions maybe for me. But if you guys have any, you want to shoot them at me, I'm happy.
And while if anyone has questions, thank you, Glenn, too. I just want to make note, we first met Glenn a few years ago, and Glenn presented on this customer observation, and every company there was taking notes because it is really connecting with the customers that makes our solutions valuable. So we're taking that to heart. We're listening to you. I'm sure you're hearing from AJ, you're hearing from Brittany, you're hearing from Sean and customer care team. We're doing a lot of outbound outreach to you all to bring your stories into Webcheckout and weave it into what we do. So thank you, Glenn. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and another thing that we can do, I don't really see any questions, but another thing that we just talk about are topics for future learning sessions. Is if you guys are would like us to be doing a few more webinars where we're communicating with you about certain features or topics, or just having open discussions about things, we're happy to set those up, and just kind of, we'd like to understand kind of what cadence you want that at. It's just because we've kind of done things the certain way in the past doesn't mean we always have to, keep doing it the same way. I don't know if you guys ever heard that, cutting the ends off the ham, that's kind of an old saying down south, but I'm just asking a lot of questions because I'm like, do they want more? Do they want less? Like, let's ask them, find out, what type of topics would you guys like to hear about? All right, so no questions. We're good. They're ready to get to the meat. They're already done with this.
All
I
right.
I will be quiet. You guys have a wonderful day. Thanks again. Hey, internal team, everybody, thanks again for all the work that you put into this. I really appreciate it. It's going to be a wonderful day.
Thanks, Glenn. All right. All right. Now we'll turn it over to AJ Oatman, who will be walking us through the June release. So give us one moment here. I'm gonna stop my screen, and AJ, you will start presenting.
Awesome. All right. Yep. I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. Well, welcome everyone to my review of the June 2024 release. For those of you not familiar with me, I am AJ Ootman, your customer success manager. And I do just want to piggyback off what Glenn said. It has been such a pleasure this year. I've been able to visit Alon and Duke. I've got a few more site visits lined up this month. And getting into your centers and observing your workflow has really aided us in building a better product and better serving you. So I just really appreciate all of the clients that have opened their doors to us over the years. And we, of course, are also ecstatic about Glenn's new leadership. All right, well, let's dive into talking about what you can expect from this release. So during today, I'm going to go over all of the allocation UI improvements. Additionally, we'll talk about adding resources during staging, our brand new public catalog, as well as patron portal and greenlighting improvements. Last but not least, my favorite new feature, which is requests and turndowns. All right. Well, let's get started by going over some of the allocation UI improvements today. So when I'm in Webcheckout, I can see, of course, all of my reservations as well as all of my checkouts. Many of you are likely familiar with the ability to change a patron on an existing reservation. However, in our new version, you can also change that patron on an existing checkout. So if you have a patron who maybe passed their equipment to another student or staff member in their project who's returning it, you can now change who is in charge of that checkout. This is a huge value add, particularly for those of you that are using our Greenlighting module, as often patrons will share equipment if they're all working on the same project. All right, so let's go ahead and see this in action. I'm going to click on Lisa Turtle's CKID. Now, I do need the operator capability, change patron on current checkouts, which I currently have. So because of that, I can hit Edit Checkout. And then using the pencil icon on the left-hand pane, I'm going to swap Lisa out to her project partner, Samuel Powers, and just verify that he's still taking this for the same project where the blue fern grows. I'll hit Submit and then save this update. Right. So this is going to make swapping patrons out much easier for whatever reason. And again, for those of you using the Greenlighting module, this is a big value add, as we hear you that oftentimes patrons will move that gear back and forth if they're working on the same projects. All right. Now, for those of you that have upgraded to one of our last releases, you are likely familiar with staging. Staging allows you to track the pre-packing process of your orders. Well, we've added to staging to give what we call our expedited add function. This function will allow you to add resources during the staging process that were not originally part of your reservation. Before we see this in action, I want to showcase this setting. So I'm going to go to my admin tab and then select Checkout Center. From my Checkout Center detail page, I'm going to select my Operations tab, which controls all of the primary settings at your Checkout Center. And then I want to ensure that Enable Expedited Add is checked. Mine is. So now we can add resources to a reservation during staging. All right, let's see this in action. I'm going to go to my patron, Kelly Kapowski's CKID. And on the left-hand pane, I'm going to hit Stage Reservation. That will open up my stage reservation modal, where I'm going to begin scanning in barcodes to this reservation. As I scan in barcodes, you'll notice that the status of what I've scanned in shows up on the right-hand pane and will continue to increase as I either scan in barcodes or if I use our manual stage button to add an item manually. Well, now I'm at 100%, but I realize that I have an additional resource that I want to add to this reservation, but I don't want to click out and add it through editing the reservation. I just want to scan it in. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just scan in that barcode. Great. When I scan it in, I notice that there's this orange triangle alert. If I select that triangle alert, it alerts me that this barcode doesn't match an item that is intended to be scanned, right? This doesn't exist yet on this reservation. But I now have this plus icon I can select. It's going to verify that it's not part of the allocation, but I want to add it and scan it. I'll hit yes, and it now adds it to my reservation. All right. This is a really large value add for those of you that regularly use staging and you don't want to click out of this pane. You can just add resources as needed. All right. Great. All right, we've made some additional improvements to the allocation workflow. So to showcase this, I am going to edit this reservation and walk you through some of the changes to this allocation detail page. All right, so I'm going to add another item, and I'm going to add it in my resources autocomplete box. So I'm going to add my Sony PXW body kit. Once I add it, I see this red alert icon. I also see the error report on the left-hand pane, which says there's item conflicts. This red stop sign will give really clear feedback which item has the error. If I click on it, it tells me that this item is not available during the time that I've created this reservation. So I could either replace this item with another, request it, which we'll talk about a little bit later, or in my case, I'm just going to turn it down. For those of you familiar with turndowns say a patron requested this item, but it is not available, so we're turning it down. I can turn down 3 ways. The simplest, just click this turn down in the modal, or I can click the checkbox and use our thumbs down icon, which is our turn down item icon, or I can simply right click the item and then select turn down here, which is what I'm going to do. Once I've turned down the resource, a new column header pops up, which is listed as turndowns. I can toggle between the column headers that open up. And if I toggle to the turndowns column header, I have action items available. So if you made a mistake in turning this down, I can hit the reverse arrow to remove that action, or select the boxes to do that in bulk. All right, but I did want to turn it down, so I'm going to go back to my reserved items. Additionally, for those of you with the RRT module, we've improved that convert button to now be even clearer, where they can convert from RRT to ID using these action buttons. I'm imagining that my headphones, I notice, are damaged. So I'm going to select these headphones, and I want to switch this headphone 10 back to an RRT reservation. That way, when the patron shows up, I can go get a fixed headphone, scan it in at that time. So I'm going to select RRT to change it to reserved by resource type. All right. Great. In addition to all of these new buttons, right? You may see one that you're not quite familiar with. You'll see this hand with a plus icon on it. This is our new request button that you're going to see throughout today's demonstration. This request button is really helpful from this operator workflow, because if you happen to have a student worker or even an operator that has lower privileges or lower capabilities, I should say, and someone requests an item that they're, say, not certified for or they don't have access to, you can still request it. And then when the administrator is in, they can choose to approve or deny it. So we're going to see that in action. I'm going to add my Red Ranger Gemini kit. All right, when I add that Red Ranger Gemini kit, I do see in my alerts on the left-hand pane that they are not authorized. And if I click on the orange triangle, it tells me that Kelly Kapowski is not authorized to use this resource type. But as mentioned, I can check the box and select my requests icon. And now she's requested it. So once my administrator is in, they can choose to approve or deny it, which we'll see in action a little later during today's demonstration. But here it does show up on my request pane. All right. In addition to these UI improvements, you'll notice this information icon beside all of my resources. If I select that information icon, we now have expanded fields on that information icon. So not only can you clearly see what resource type, what condition node it has, as well as its contents, we've added additional fields. So they can also see the barcode, the serial number, and the history, and it pops up on this easy to see modal. So your operators can simply click the information icon to quickly get a summary of the details of this resource. All right. Great. I'm going to add a couple more items to this reservation. So I'll keep adding them in that reservation autocomplete. Okay. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and save the reservation. Now I'm going to envision that Kelly comes up, she's ready to check out this equipment. So I'm going to hit edit for pickup. All right. Now, once I hit edit for pickup, you'll notice that the most recent item I added has this red alert icon. So that stop sign is going to continue to give your operators really clear feedback on if there's a problem. I can click on it. And right now, this particular resource is within our turnaround time window. So I could either use these action icons, or in my case, I'm going to remove the conflicting turnaround time schedules, right? And while I'm editing, I am going to go ahead and approve that Red Ranger Gemini kit. So I'm going to use this thumbs up icon to approve that request, right? All right, so now that I've approved my request, as well as I've removed those turnaround time warnings, I'm going to save my checkout. All right. So Kelly goes ahead and takes out that equipment. Well, let's imagine that she returns later in the day. All right. And she is wanting to renew a few of these items. However, she's returning an item while she's in the checkout center. So I'm going to hit Edit Checkout. And I'm going to select this Streambox Vita 01. All right. Great. And actually, sorry, I got ahead of myself. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to hit this return arrow button to return this one item. Great. Once I return it, this returned column header pops up. So just like with turn downs, we have really clear column headers for items that have been turned down, returned, or what we'll see coming up, rejected. And then she wants to renew most of this order, but she's not renewing everything. So I'm going to hit Edit Checkout. All right. And I'm going to remove the items that she's not renewing by selecting their checkboxes and clicking this X icon. That pops them in this not renewed column header. So it's really clear what you're renewing as well as what you're not renewing. I'll now use the pencil icon to move the time. So she's renewing these to June 20th. I'll hit submit. And now I'll save the renewal. Once I've saved that renewal, the items that are not part of the overall allocation return time will be bolded. So we see those bolded, whereas those that are part of the overall allocation return time are unbolded. So this entire workflow is just going to give your operators a lot better feedback that they can see right on their order. All right. Well, now that we've talked about the UI improvements during your checkout workflow, we're now going to transition into talking about the improvements to Patron Portal. There are a number of new settings available within the Patron Portal. One that I'm very excited about is our new public catalog. So if you want to enable patrons to see a public catalog, what that will do is they'll be able to see all of your inventory without the need to log into the Patron Portal. I'm first going to verify that I've enabled this setting by going Admin, Checkout Center, and selecting my Patron Portal tab. I'll scroll down to my Patron Portal properties. And I want to ensure that this setting, public catalog access, is enabled. With this enabled, I can now just take my URL and I'm going to paste that URL. But I'm going to make sure that instead of /WCO at the end, I'm saying /public. And your patrons can, of course, bookmark this page. I can now see any checkout centers that are publicly available. I see my checkout center's short description as well as its open hours. I can click in it and then see my full catalog, and I can click through and see all of the resource types that are within this Patron portal. I can see their descriptions, all of their individual resources, their related types, essentially the full catalog, except of course, I don't have the ability to reserve this equipment unless I log into the Patron portal. This is a huge value add and something that a number of you have expressed you would like to see. It's a big value add, particularly if you have prospective students or prospective clients that want to see your full inventory and maybe even incentivized to join a class or to go to your rental house if you have the equipment that they're looking for. All right. Well, not only is this public catalog available, but the actual Patron portal itself has had a number of improvements. So I'm going to go into Patron portal and I'm going to sign in with my patron, Samuel Powers. And once Samuel Powers logs into his homepage, I can already see improvements to it. I now, on the home screen, can glance at all of my upcoming reservations, my current checkouts, any checked out resources, as well as a full history. And I can see this right on my homepage, so I don't have to click to leave it. I can collapse any of these column headers using the drop-down carrots. If I want to expand any particular windows, right, I just click them again. In addition to that, we can make a new reservation by clicking New Reservation, or in the top right-hand corner, we have this new icon for a really clear action icon. I'll hit New, and then I'm going to select my checkout center. Hit OK, and I can see my message of the day, and I'll close it out. Our reservation modal also has additional improvements. I can see a summary at the top for the total number of items that are currently on my reservation, the start and end time, as well as a full duration. Also in this top box, I have my attachments clip right there, as well as my trash icon to wipe out what's on this reservation. My times modal has been simplified so that start and end times are right in one box. And I'm going to go ahead and set my start and end times from June 13, running until June 20th. I'll select my project, or Samuel will select his project, Shape of Air. And then I'll add some notes. Will need assistance placing items into truck. Great. And we'll agree to my terms and conditions. And now when I scroll to the bottom, it tells me that my cart is empty, and I can select the book icon to start looking for my contents. So I'll select the book icon. And this opens an additional UI improvement where instead of the old carousel, we now see our catalog at a glance, so patrons can see all of their items in one window. I'll select my cameras, my Sony, great, and then I'm going to select my body kit. Awesome. All right, and I do want to note that just like the information icon from the operator view, I can select that here. And we've expanded this view so it's really clear if patrons are curious, right, for more details about these resources. All right, and I'm going to hit this plus icon to reserve this by type. And I see the one, meaning there's one resource in my cart. Now, in addition to the summary at the top, we've improved this reservation workflow to work from top all the way to the bottom. So that way patrons don't have to scroll back to the top when they're ending their order. Instead, any errors are going to display at the bottom. However, if I scroll up, you'll notice that this reservation has errors alert, follows my mouse cursor as I move up or as I move down. It tells me to click here for more information. When I click it, it tells me the error name. Allocation is before the project start date. Now, because I have this projects module, I can quickly glance at what this project start date is. So I'm going to select my projects button, which looks like this little light bulb. Great. And I'm going to select, I have two projects, but I'm going to select the one I'm reserving for, Shape of Air. And right there, I can see all of the details for this project, specifically the start and end date. So I can see here clearly that this project doesn't open until June 17. I'm trying to reserve too early. And I can quickly go back to the allocation I'm working on by selecting Continue on this CKID. All right, and I'm going to change my start time to be June 18, so to start after that project window opens. I'll hit that save button, and right away I see a thumbs up with looks good and a submit reservation button. We now have it listed as submit reservation because we heard feedback from all of you to just have a clear, I'm now submitting this reservation to the checkout center. So I'll hit that button. The reservation is now confirmed pending approval, and it has been submitted. All right. Well, after Samuel submits his reservation, he talks to his project team, and they realize that they're under such a tight deadline that they're going to have to start editing their project the day of their primary shoot. So he's going to need to reserve some edit bays the day of this shoot. So he can stay right on this page and just hit the pencil icon to go back in and edit this reservation. All right. And now that he's editing this reservation, I'm going to hit Browse Catalog, and using the search field, I'm going to look for my Avid edit bays. Great. He goes to the Avid edit bays and, oh no, sees a warning. Certification is not granted. Samuel Powers was in a class the previous year where they tested on how to properly use these edit bays, and he got certified. But because the professor tests every year, his certification got revoked because he's not in that current class the current year. Well, because he tested the previous year, the professor that's in charge of this class will sometimes allow patrons to reserve if their edit bays are open. So that's why we're now introducing requests and approvals. Requests and approvals will allow patrons to request gear that they're not certified for. You can also allow them to request gear they're not authorized for. Additionally, if items are not available, you can allow patrons to request those, because if that initial reservation got canceled and that equipment becomes available, they now could, of course, check out that gear. So before we fix Sam's reservation, let's go back into the operator view and review the settings you'll need in order to allow requests and approvals. So back in this operator view, I'm in my Checkout Center detail page, and I'm still under my Patron Portal tab. The first two settings that you'll want to ensure you've checked are, if I scroll down, we have two settings that you may be familiar with: Patron Portal Hide Unauthorized and Patron Portal Hide Uncertified. If these boxes are checked, that means you're not going to be able to see anything you're not authorized or certified for. I'm making sure they're unchecked so that my patrons can see these items, but they'll have that warning if certification or authorization is not granted. Now that my patrons can see these resource types, I'm going to scroll up to my Patron Portal policies. And we have three policies that you can select from. The first is to allow patrons to request unauthorized types. This means even if they're not a part of a group that grants access to your restricted types, they can still request it. The next is allowing patrons to request uncertified types. So, right, just as it sounds, even if they're not certified, they can still make that request. And finally, if items are not available, they can request it, which is going to open that door. So if they do become available, then they can still go ahead and check out those items. Additionally, this will help with your turn down reports, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So as I mentioned, Samuel Powers was previously certified to check out these Avid edit bays. But I can verify as his operator that his certification has been revoked. If I go admin organization on my organization detail page, I have this certification tab. This was a big improvement to our certifications module during our last release. And those of you using it may be familiar with this new tab. I'm going to select my Avid Edit Bays certification. And under my grants page, I'm just going to verify that, yep, Samuel Powers' status was in fact revoked, right? So I verified, even though he did have this permission previously, we test every year, so this has been revoked. Well, I'm going to go back to Sam's reservation in Patron Portal. And even though he's not currently certified, he'll select that request button that you're familiar with now to go ahead and request this equipment. All right. Well, while he's here, he's also going to look for some other equipment. He'll look for this Red Ranger Gemini kit. And in this case, his authorization isn't granted. So he was in a number of courses the previous year that granted access to this equipment. And this equipment requires you to be a part of a group, and he is currently not. But he's going to go ahead and request the use of this camera as well. So he'll hit this little request button. Great. All right, so he's requested that item. And we're going to look for one additional item. So I'll go back to my browse catalog, and using the search icon, he's going to look for a lighting kit as part of this shoot. Great. So we're going to go to our RE kits. And he knows that these are pretty heavily checked out. So he's going to just double check its availability. I'll use our calendar icon, which we released a couple releases ago. And I'm going to glance at the month view, and Sam's pretty disappointed because this item is fully checked out for the week that he's wanting to use it. But he'll go ahead and request it in case the person who currently has it reserved cancels that reservation. So I'm going to add it to my order. And we now see, because it wasn't available, we see this stop alert icon. If I click on it, it says it's currently unavailable from June 12th to June 20, right when Sam is trying to reserve all of this equipment. So I'm going to go ahead and hit request and add it to my requests. Now that it's listed as a request, there's a thumbs up. This order looks good, and he'll submit his changes. Right. All right, so I can see this now pending reservation. If I go back to my home page, I see this listed in my upcoming reservations. He's now submitted this full reservation, and I'm going to go in as an operator and process his reservation. So I'll go back to my home page. All right, and I'm going to go into Samuel Powers reservation. Great. All right, and I see my reserved item as well as my requested item. So I see these requests, and I'm going to hit edit reservation. All right, so I'm going to take care of these requests. Okay. And when you're processing your requests, you can use the thumbs up to say, I approve this request, or thumbs down to reject or add it to your turn downs. I'm going to go ahead and give a thumbs up for the Avid Edit Bays because they're currently available and the class doesn't need all of them. So I'll give the thumbs up to approve that. Once I approve the item, it goes over to my reserved items column header. However, with the lighting kit, the class that's currently using this equipment is so heavily allocated that I do not want to approve this, and I'm going to give it a thumbs down. And I am this time going to reject it. Okay. For my third item, you may remember that that was currently reserved for another patron. I'm not going to do any action for that. Instead, I'm going to see if that previous patron cancels their reservation. And then when Samuel comes in, I can go ahead and approve it and then check it out to him. If it doesn't, once that item hits its pickup grace period, it'll get automatically added to my turn down report, which is a huge advantage to our turn down reports in that now, if patrons are submitting requests in Patron Portal for unavailable equipment, and again, it goes past that pickup grace period, it'll automatically get added. So it's going to give you a lot better feedback on what patrons are requesting that you may not have enough of. That way, at the end of your semester, you can go resources, go down to your turn down report, and get much better feedback for all of the resource types that were either requested in Patron Portal or by an operator and simply are not available. That way, at the end of the year, you can review this list. And if there's a resource type that keeps showing up, like I can see this Red Ranger Gemini kit keeps showing up on this report, that gives me good feedback that I may need to buy more of this particular type of equipment. All right. Well, this brings us near the end of our most significant features in the June 2024 release. Of course, I haven't gone over every single improvement, but you've at least seen the most significant ones. Well, I want to transition to talking about all of the web checkout doors of access. You may have noticed as I was going through that our Greenlighting module, as well as our certification module, significantly increase the levels of access you can give to your patrons. So I want to walk you through all of the different doors that Web Checkout can provide for you to be able to control access to your gear. The first door that any of you that are our current users have is that they have to have a valid patron record to be able to log in, all right? But then we have a number of add-on modules to help you fine-tune that access. So if you have our authentication module, that's going to enable you to control access based on them authenticating using your authentication credentials that your institution uses. Many of you might be familiar with groups, which allows you to grant access to restricted resources or restricted checkout centers. Then, even if someone may have access to gear, that doesn't mean they've performed a test to say that they're ready to actually use that gear. That's why we have our certifications module, where you can verify if someone is tested on proficiency to be able to actually use those resources. After certifications, if you have our project module, that can ensure that someone has a project role, as well as that the project has been fully greenlit so that they can check out that gear. And as you saw during today's demonstration, you can control the times when they can check out gear to that particular project. And finally, you can also just require approvals at the end of all of these steps where an operator can give their stamp of yes, they can pick it up, or no, they can't. Now, some of you I know need all of these doors of access based on your policies. Others of you may just need one or two. And now with requests and approvals, you have the ability to approve people through that approval process, even if they may not be certified or they may not be authorized. If you may need one of these doors of access, please reach out to us. Or if you're just curious about one of these doors of access and how it may affect your workflow, please reach out to us. Right now, we are actively working to improve our Greenlighting module, and we're looking for partners who can give us input on enhancing this module. If you're partner with us, we'll work with you to better understand your workflows and see them in real time. Additionally, if this year you're looking to save time, I know time is likely your most valuable asset, consider adding professional service hours. With professional service hours, we can not only train your administrators, train your student workers, but we can assist with helping you improve your workflows in 2024. We can also brand your patron portal, brand your email templates, as well as add a number of charts so that when you're presenting to your administrators, you can give a full report of what's happened during your year. So as always, if you are interested in any of those needs, please reach out to sales@webcheckout.net. And of course, if you're looking to upgrade to our June 2024 release, please reach out to support@webcheckout.net to schedule now. All right. Well, it does look like there are some questions in the chat. So I'm going to just stop my share. And I do want to open the floor for any questions.
Thanks, AJ. That was a great demonstration. We hope you all enjoy the new features. And yes, I will just read off some questions first, and then we can open it up for a discussion if there's more questions. All right, we're going to start with, there was a question about, can the ability to add resources during the staging process be controlled at the operator level or just at the checkout center level? And it is just at the checkout center level, right? So if you can circulate resources, then you have the ability to add resources to the reservation during staging.
That's right. Yep. And you need to enable expedited add per checkout center in your operations settings. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Zach. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Zach.
And then Ashley asks, are we able to do a turndown report even if the order isn't confirmed? If someone wants to check out one item and we don't have it, we want to do a turndown, but aren't checking anything else out. So go ahead,
Yeah.
AJ.
This is such a great question. Absolutely. So it sounds like, Ashley, you're just wanting to, like, in this example, this reservation only has one item, right? So I could turn that down.
But the reservation has to be created and saved, right? It has to be a
Yes,
confirmed
that's right.
reservation. And then within that reservation, you will have to say it has been turned down.
That's right. And if there's just one item, once you turn it down, it's going to change states to a canceled reservation right away.
If I can jump in, by virtue of doing this, you get more information. You know the student who turned it down. You know when they intended to use it. You have a lot more information to justify or to expand on the turn down report than you otherwise would have if it was just this one was turned down once, this one was turned down once.
Thank you, Lee.
Okay,
Any
thank you.
reasons why you turn down someone? Like, is there a way to message them so that they don't just get a generic no?
Oh, the reason for the turn down?
Yep, that's a great question. So if their reservation is canceled, provided you have our email email messaging module, sorry, you can configure settings so that they get an automatic email for that canceled reservation. And depending on the language you've put in there, could give them more information. But presently, when you turn it down, there's not a way to add like a manual message, but you can configure a generic message for all of your patrons in your email templates.
Thank you, AJ.
Great question.
There's also a question, is there a comparison chart to compare the organization's current setup and the newer version?
So like when admin and feel free to chime in to unmute yourself. When you mention that, are you talking about like the organization detail page, or are you meaning something else?
Hi, AJ. Just really to see kind of a what's new compared to what we currently.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So part of the follow-up of today's session is definitely reviewing our release notes for the June 2024 version. And those release notes will highlight all of the significant changes. So you'll basically see what I showed on screen, but it'll be documented so you can, review all of that to be able to compare, right, what you're used to the new features. Did that answer your question, Sinisa?
It did. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Great question.
And just feel free to unmute yourselves if you have questions at this time. I know there are some in chat. While you all are working on your questions, I do want to address, I saw a question come through about integration with Microsoft Teams, and I'm curious what the use case there is. As Glenn was saying, why do you leave web checkout? What other processes are you or other systems are you using that should be integrated with web checkout? Is it something that web checkout can do? We all have, we're all very familiar with Teams, whether we love it or hate it, that's another story. But I think that was a question from Paul or a request.
Yeah, it was an interesting idea potentially where because we've always thought about how do we reach our customers, our students really primarily. And, we all kind of know email, they get overloaded with it, but text messaging is where they live. If you want to have a student worker and you want to find out if they can pick up a shift, that works. That's always been a challenge in terms of text messaging. We've had many conversations about, but we're not using Teams yet with students, but we do have some areas and some students that are, but it is a forward-looking thing that we're thinking about. And that might give an easier or a better way that web checkout could integrate as a informational thing, so they could get updates about, hey, your order is now ready, hey, or your order's overdue. And then there's also potentially ways that they could reach back out to us if they had questions via that communication and collaboration platform.
Okay, so it is about communication, about collaboration, not necessarily having it to be Microsoft Teams, but just a tool or the features available within Web Checkout to communicate to your students in that matter.
I think whatever ecosystem that your institution is using that already exists, and that's one that we're been leaning into a lot this year, institutional wide. There certainly are others, so it could be a larger conversation than just Teams.
Got it. Okay. Thanks, Paul. Some additional questions came up. So is there any flexibility in configuring what's viewable in the public catalog at the resource type level?
Yeah, so I wanted, oh, sorry, Jeannie.
Go ahead, AJ, go for it.
Yeah, I wanted to address that. Thank you, Daniel. So Daniel, the settings that I showed you, they are checkout center wide. However, there is some flexibility in, I'm right now on a resource type detail page. I'm under its admin tab. You can choose if a resource type is visible within the patron portal, but if it's individually visible, you'll need to follow the settings that you set at your checkout center level if you make your public catalog available to patrons.
Yeah, so if I can just repeat what you're saying or just to validate it. So if the resource type, the public catalog is just exactly what your students or your patrons currently see in Patron Portal. It's an exact replica. The only difference with the public catalog is that they don't need to authenticate. So any user that has the URL can access it. And then obviously it's just the catalog. It's informative. They're unable to make any reservations. So the details you can see in Patron Portal now, you're able to see that with the public catalog.
Right.
Now there was another question. So with the public catalog, I noticed a fee rule of $0. Is it able to display the daily fine rate instead, or hide that if we don't use fees?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't believe at this time there's a way to turn that off in Patron Portal. Please, Lee, or anyone on Web Checkout team jump in, right, if I'm incorrect in that, but I don't believe it presently can be removed.
I believe if you the fee rate, what it displays should display whatever your resource type fee rule is. So if you have a daily rate or a tiered rate, it should provide that information as it appears in Web Checkout. Now, as for if you don't use fees, I believe if you are not assessing usage fees, so at the checkout center, if that usage fee is inactive or disabled, then your usage fees, it should not be visible. There shouldn't be a fee rule 0. It should just not appear at all.
So thank you, Jeannie.
Right.
All right, any other questions?
Okay.
Great, thank you, Nick.
And as AJ mentioned, the June release is available. We'll be making the public announcement this week. But these great features, they're available now. Just schedule your upgrade and you'll get them with the June release. All right. Wonderful. We are running a little ahead of schedule, but we're going to continue on with this morning's session. So give me one moment here. And our client spotlight, Mark from UT, I know he is on this call. We'll give him a moment to also prepare, but give me one moment. Oh, hi, Mark. I see you. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned, we are now going to have a client spotlight, and it's more of a show and tell, an open discussion. So thank you so much. We have the Moody College of Communications at the University of Texas at Austin. They're using Web Checkout to manage equipment usage for class projects with the Greenlighting module. So everyone, please join me and welcome Mark Caparo from Senior Media Support. Thank you. Senior Media Technician. So Mark, we'll turn it over to you. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, Jeannie. Good morning, everybody. I'm here to talk briefly about our the way we've started to use Greenlighting for our process. I work here in the Moody College of Communication here at the University of Texas. We have what's in a place that's called the Moody Equipment Checkout. You'd probably call it the cage before, although we don't call it that anymore. I'm part of a 3-person team that we work to, purchase the equipment and manage the implementation and how students get it. So the Moody College of Communication involves a couple of different, departments. There's the RTF department, which is really about 85% of what we do. That's radio, television, and film, large film productions and everything that's sort of part of a film school. We also support the journalism students and the the regular communication students and advertising, which are a much smaller sort of impact to what we do. So we use Greenlighting basically and mostly to manage, the larger checkouts, the projects that span obviously, sometimes multiple shoots and multiple days and have, in Web Checkout, they involve multiple allocations as well. Just because of the size of them, sometimes 300 to 350 items. That's the top end of how big a project will support. So I think what I'll do is just sort of walk through how we have it set up right now and how students work with it. It is, I guess I'll just add that it's still very much a work in progress, not only with Web Checkout and the software, but just moving the school away from sort of some of the things we've been doing already. Everything we do students all have access to equipment based on the course that they're in. And that is, that's what we call in web checkout, the groups. The groups are the courses that they're in. So that's what decides what equipment they get. Obviously, in film productions, they're working with students that are not necessarily in their class, but maybe in a different class that have access to different equipment and all of that sort of stuff. So we're trying to sort of manage that. And also part of the main reason that we're trying to move towards a more project-based sort of situation is because of safety concerns and really trying to lock in the approvals and, making sure that, a student comes and gets, a U-Haul's worth of equipment, that they're actually going and doing something that's safe and that, they're not going to hurt anybody or anything like that. So they have to go through sort of that process. And what we've had before, and even still right now, is, students are in the class and they have access to all this equipment and they can just make a reservation. And we sort of have to figure out after the fact, well, what are they doing? Are they doing it, is it on the level, all that sort of stuff. So we're using Greenlighting to sort of control, control access to the larger stuff.
Mark, would you like me to stop sharing my screen so you can go into screen share?
Sure.
Or to continue? Yeah. All right. It's all yours.
Okay, so go. I'm sorry, you know what? I have to allow. I got a new machine too, so sorry
That's
for
okay.
this.
And while Mark is giving permissions, like the Greenlighting projects module, I think it was relative. It's the last new module that we've released. There are a handful of you using this, the projects, right? Using it currently. We do have a college in Australia, the Australia Film, TV and Radio School. They currently, along with UT at Austin, they currently are heavy users of projects. I think they have over 700. UT is very close. I think you all have over, what did we say, over 100 and some projects, but you can see your screen now.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that.
Oh, good.
Oh,
Thank you.
So this is our patron portal, where students, their main point of access to us. Obviously, we've got it all done up in our burnt orange colors. You guys have all, probably worked with this, so you're familiar with it. The way that we have set it up where students, we want to sort of control how they come in and get stuff and sort of basically make them request a project before they start reserving. Before they can start reserving, they will request a project, and then I'll create a project and it will stay in the yellow lit status, and they'll be able to reserve their equipment and then add the equipment after the fact. So the way that we have it working right now, just because we do want students to, be able to go to just one place. Right now, when you come into the patron portal and do a new reservation, it will open up the message of the day. And that's where we have the link to our request form. So there's a little bit about our, we have our system set up so people can reserve 24 hours in advance or not, last minute. We have limits 7 days, and the projects right now are set up as requests for over 20 items, which is a completely arbitrary number. It's just sort of like, well, that's sort of a more manageable number than, walking in the morning and seeing a reservation for 150 items. And that's sort of our baseline. Okay, well, you can have 20 items, and anything more than that, then it's going to be a safety issue. It's going to be a project. You're going to have to start a project. So right now we have it set up that nobody can reserve more than 20 items unless it's a project. So we come in here and there is a link to the project request form. There's one of the problems is and I'll go ahead and go to it, but it is right now a Microsoft form, and I won't bore you with the details, but the university, we have Microsoft emails, but we have 2 different Microsoft emails, which is a huge thing, and it's a big, IT is moving towards one system or one email address, basically. So that's been part of the problem with us, adapting different things, but we're using this Microsoft form, and the students will come in here and they'll start, they'll put the date that they're submitting it. They'll put their name, my own name here. Our EIDs is, our unique numbers that every student has. And I don't even really need to do this for real, but I could just put something in there. They'll put their course number, their email address, the unique number. So there's the course numbers, and then there's unique numbers. There's a lot of different numbers for each class, and that's sort of complicated. So we have to do both of them. You put your instructor in there, put a value that's a number. I'll be the instructor today. And again, I don't think I have to really put anything in there. And I'll go, so I need to do one more. 2018. And so then we'll have the title of your project, which, is always a fun thing to do. And you'll see that when we get into Greenlighting, the start date. And then the reason that I'm still going through this, well, they have to put their end date or their start date for the project, not the request date. So the project will have a different, they can request them very far in advance, basically. And then the other thing that we have here is our crew, our production crew, which sort of is a way of determining who gets access to what. And as you know, probably know in Greenlighting, you can give students that are on the project access to make reservations, even though they still only have access to the things that they're in the groups for, the courses that they're in. It's just another way of sort of managing it. So if we want to add people to our crew, we can come to this next page, put in their name, their EID, and all, what they are, their role. We have it selected. Can this crew member reserve equipment for the project? And would you like to add it? And then you can go on and you can add up to 10 crew members from this form. But yeah, that is, we don't usually have people adding 10. It's sort of, we started it in the fall, basically. And it was in the fall, it was a little bit smaller. And then in the spring, which is really our big production time, we've started using it a lot more and actually sort of opened it up to the public and started using this form. So we've only been using this form for one semester. It has been going pretty well. There's always some classes it works really well for. Other classes, it's a little bit more of a haul, but we're trying to move towards this idea. So yeah, that's how you would basically start this project request, and then I'll get an email that says, hey, this person has requested a project. Oh, I'm sorry. So this form, once it's done, and you click through everything and finish it, it will be routed directly to the faculty member of the course, and that faculty member will use DocuSign to sign the form and say, okay, yeah, this is all on the level, that they're really part of the class, they're really reserving something. And then when I get that form, then when I get that form completed and signed, then I'll start a project, and it will be in the yellow light status, so they can start reserving their equipment, but they still don't have final authorization until they do the things at the departmental level that they have to do, like meet with the safety supervisor, plan their production, submit budgets, whatever it is that they have to do. And then we'll get a final approval, and we'll just flip it from yellow light to green light, and then they'll be able to check out. So yeah, and if you wanted to go, Jeannie, now, if I unshare, then we can go to
Sure will.
Okay.
In here.
Zoom. And yeah, if you want to show my slides from Webcheckout.
Yes, we're at a new project.
Yeah. So we have a lot of rules about information that can be shown, so I had to go through, and it can't really open up Greenlighting and show it to you, but I did some screenshots and blurred out the names so that we could sort of just get a basic understanding of how it's working. So whenever you're ready to put that up.
Oh, can you see? So I've got new projects. Can you see my screen?
Oh, Jeannie Clark's screen. Okay, I see it now.
All right.
Yeah, so new projects. This is basically, when I start a project, I will go through here. To tell you the truth, right now we have the name of the project, and when we flip to the next slide, you'll sort of see we were doing names like the titles of films, which was fun, but I think it's the next slide. But it wasn't particularly useful, and it could actually be kind of confusing because that's what shows up on the other side in Webcheckout. What you see is the project name. So yeah, Those Who Love Me Follow Me, or the title of the film is not necessarily useful. So we've actually been I've switched to, and it's kind of hard for me to see, but you might see it'll be so-and-so MFA thesis, so-and-so undergrad thesis, the student's name and their project. And that way they'll see, my name, MFA thesis. Okay, I need to select that before I start making my reservation. So yeah, and if you want to go back to the new project slide. So yeah, then we do that. The student that makes the and I guess my point is my name and project ID are the same. I am experimenting with the generated project IDs, but it sort of has just worked out to be fine to just to have them be the same thing.
Yeah.
So the owner would be the student that is making the reservation, the student that's requesting the project. And then authorization, this is a tricky thing about Greenlighting, and not that I would get into too much more about it, but it doesn't say yellow light, red light, green light. It says circulation, no authorization. What are the others? I can't remember, or something else, but that's where you set whether it's what status it's in. And then we get into project type, which I have listed down here. Well, actually, this is not the project types that we're seeing in that drop-down list. That is the policy class. But we have project types that say basically the same thing: MFA thesis, undergrad thesis, pre-thesis, whatever it is, whatever the project is, whatever type of project it is. And then section is, the course they're in, and that will sort of determine what they get. Anyway, so that's how we'll start a new project. And if you want to move on to the next slide, these are current projects that I have going right now, and you can see the status is greenlit, so all these projects are good to go. If one thing I wanted to point out is that sometimes we use this for individual projects, production projects, but then that Main Mester in Ireland is a course that's been offered through the college where the students travel to Ireland with the professor, and they've all taken equipment from us and taken it overseas. So to manage all those allocations, we started a project for them, and they reserve underneath the project.
Cool.
So all those allocations, even though they're to separate students and they're not, they're for the course, we've put it under the project. The same with that VOSIS Summer Institute as well. The
Awesome.
MFA thesis are the 2 MFA theses that we have going on this summer. So if you want to go to the next slide, these are the inactive projects. And as you can see, we changed from the titles, and I didn't put the description up here because the description, I've also been using the description field to just, sometimes in the course of making a project, we'll get emails that say, oh yeah, I'm doing this and all that. And and one thing we've talked to Jeannie about is like, hey, maybe we could attach files to these projects. That would be great. But until that time, I've been really kind of copying and pasting emails in the description field, and they have phone numbers and all that sort of stuff that I can't share. So I didn't share it. But sort of trying to move away from that because it's not super manageable, and we're putting the titles of the films in the description field and sort of that sort of information. So I think that's a little more useful.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Need to go back to that screen.
Yeah, well, no, that's okay. So now we come into this. This is a project, and I was just going to sort of point out that we will put the roles in. The roles are pretty useful. Some of the projects we've had, the larger projects, the classes that really work well with us are the undergraduate thesis class and so on, and a couple of other classes. But they're in teams of 2, usually a director and a producer. So they're always going to be in there. And then they're a director of photography, or whoever they want to have access, or whoever they want to be part of the project. So we have rules here that, now with this, we can add people to the project and they can actually make reservations, but to actually even come in and pick something up, we have to know who they are, know that they're enrolled. And this will only put, it only put roles in there of people that are enrolled in courses and are in Webcheckout. And if you were working with an outside cinematographer or anything like that, they obviously wouldn't have this access, but this is for, students here. And then our allocations, which as you can see, this one had multiple reservations or allocations involved in it. Even so, they all went out on March 19th, but just because of, the way Webcheckout works, we usually have them make reservations by department, by, this is the grip stuff, this is the camera stuff, this is the sound stuff. It's just a little bit easier to manage when we're pulling and all that sort of stuff. So that's how we make it work.
Awesome.
And was there one more slide?
Last slide.
Oh yeah, so this is the settings basically, and I thought it would be interesting just to sort of talk about, these are my project types. And we have all sorts of different project types, and the unique ID generators, it took me a long time to figure out how it works. I'm not certain that I do have it completely down, but I think I've been able to make it work, especially for, the roles. Each student that we add in a particular role for the project, they have to have a unique identifier. And what we did is make it so it says a spring 24, and we'll change that each semester so that, this is, number 1, spring 24, number 3, spring 24, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I mean, that's basically the gist of how we've been using it. I think it's been pretty useful. I think, it's great that we have it. I think I think having Greenlighting was sort of the impetus to be like, like we really should be thinking of this more like on a project, or not every single thing that we do, but some of these large RTF, these film productions, should be really more of a project-based thing, because they do involve, students from disparate classes and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much, Mark.
yeah, no problem.
And we've mentioned that Mark, internally, we've said Mark is an all-star. He did not do the full admin training. He did just a brief training on Greenlighting with Brittany, and Brittany's like, Mark's an all-star. He had the short meeting, and now he's managing projects and bringing, more of what Glenn was talking about. What are some of the processes that are outside of web checkout that you'd like to see bring into the system? And that forms, that's a great example of what we're talking about here, things that you're leaving the system to do to come back into web checkout.
Yeah.
At this time, Mark has graciously also offered his time to take some Q&A. I did see that there's some customers here who want to exchange contact information. That's great. That's what this is about, networking. But I'm sure you all want to hear from Mark. So we can open it up. If you all have questions, this is an open discussion. Feel free.
Yeah, I'll just add that, I work at a really very large university, and a lot of the things that you have to self-teach yourself a lot, so yeah.
True. That's very true.
Could you maybe talk a little bit about how you teach the patrons how to set all this up? Like, do you go to classes and talk to them? Do you have the professors show them? Do you just have documentation on the website? Because it's, kind of a couple more steps for them to go through.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would like to tell you, we do go to the classes and sort of make a presentation. The way we sort of have done it is, we do a big presentation at the very first course where they get equipment, and we sort of explain what it is that we do and so on, and what equipment checkout is, how to get into the system, that there is a portal. We do have a website that you can sort of search from the internet and, access through, we have what's called university wikis, which have a lot of information, a lot of basic information. But we do not have any sort of we don't have any videos or any sort of training. We sort of rely on the TAs and the professors to sort of, show people how it works. We also rely on the students being sharp enough to pick it up, I guess. It's I think that, it's a good question. I don't have a really good answer for you, because we, sometimes it just sort of happens, they figure out how to do it. And some people we have to sort of explain it a little bit more to. But I would say that, my expectation was that we would be fielding a lot more questions, but I think that, they have taken to it pretty easily. I think especially the Greenlighting part, I think web checkout itself is the big, that's harder to understand than Greenlighting. I think once they start a project and I start a project for them, it's the same process for them to get into web checkout. They just have to select their project, which will show up and will probably be the only one that they have, and then they can start preserving after the fact. So yes, sometimes I have to say, oh, you got to make sure to select the project, otherwise you're not going to get the access that you're thinking that you're going to get. And really, the access that we can control with Greenlighting is how far in advance somebody can make a reservation, how long somebody can make a reservation for. As you probably all know, like you can't really control the access to equipment. That's all controlled at the group level. So to answer your question, we do not really have any formal training. We have a lot of informal training and a lot of informal channels if people are having trouble figuring out how the system works.
Awesome. We have a raised hand from Chris.
Yeah, Mark, thank you very much for showing us. I was part of the original team that did the Greenlighting proposals back in the day, and I love seeing what you guys have done with it. One of the things we were trying to think of when we were trying to help create all this, because our departments, we just didn't have the funds to get the module, but I love that it's being used. One of the questions that we were trying to think of was the relationships with the faculty, that faculty relationship with the admin, as well as the faculty relationship with the students, and how is that working with your group, with your faculty, especially the power users, the ones that are at that that thesis level project. How, like, maybe you can touch a little bit about the relationship with the faculty and the admin, and how is that working?
I think it's a good question. I think I think in some cases it works great. In other cases, it does not work so great. And I think that's probably tied to personality a lot more than anything else. But I think that like anything, at a university like this, or a big university, when you're implementing change, and just to sort of add, we had our own system, our own proprietary. We had a programmer upstairs that had a system that we ran called Usher, which was, a university system. And that was how it worked for a long, long time. And then that went away. There was no more budget for that. So we had to sort of go to Webcheckout. And that in itself was a big change for everybody. And so that sort of sneaking Greenlighting in underneath that, I think, has not been as hard. There's always certain faculty that, and I didn't talk a lot about my background, but I, have been involved in film schools for many, many years at basically every position. So I, have a pretty good understanding of, where people are coming from. Yeah, some faculty want to be able to say like, oh yeah, go make a movie, and that doesn't really work out very well for us. So, but you can't really go and say, hey, don't do that anymore, like, because then you get into their pedagogy and all that sort of stuff. And we don't really want to do that. So I think we're trying to, make it, I think the idea really is to make it so that it's, in their best interest to work with us to use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The only follow-up question I had was on safety. We're dealing with a lot of safety concerns with risk management, with COVID and with remote.
Right.
Risk management has a lot more authority now than they had prior to 2019 or 2020. Just curious on how the faculty are handling that responsibility of safety with their classes, and is Greenlighting a way to, is it working the way we were thinking it was going to work, where it was going to highlight a safety concern or an issue that the faculty have to address versus the admin or the people who are at the checkout desk?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Here at University of Texas, we've had, even before COVID, although I will agree with you that since COVID, it has been much more of a concerted push to like make the safety a part of everything that we're doing. We've always had a safety supervisor. They've had some rules about safety that they've always had to do. And even before web checkout or anything, in our reservation system and still in web checkout, in order to make a reservation or reserve anything, you have to basically self-report, are you shooting near at the beach? Are you climbing up a ladder? Are you shooting from a vehicle? Are you shooting from all this? And they have to, basically say yes or no. And if they say yes, then they were directed to the safety supervisor, who's a professional who's worked in the industry and, is a great guy, but he would meet with them and sort of, basically sign off on whether it's okay. His that was sort of part of his job. The rest of his job got much bigger, so he's sort of trying to phase it out. And there's been a concerted push from the department and the college to sort of have a safety supervisor, somebody with experience in safety, to sort of, walk through the project with them and say like, hey, like, you're taking out that piece of equipment? Are you going to put it on a car? Like, are you taking a car? Are you going to go rent a car mount? Are you going to do all this stuff? And they can sort of, have the time to look through and sort of see like, all the safety issues that might be. And so Greenlighting has actually been a really good way to do that because, as I was saying before people could just make a reservation and then we have to figure out everything after the fact. Now they can come in and request that to have a project, and then we say, okay, well, you got to make sure you get this signed off on and all that sort of stuff. So it has actually been really useful in that way I think they're going to hire a new full-time person to just do safety. We have somebody that does it part-time right now. But yeah.
Mark, thank you. Yeah, with that, if I could just add, that's a great question, Chris, that you brought up. And I will say, Mark, you and your operations, you've adopted, right, the forms, and that's how you're bringing the safety and all the requirements, making sure that's all you have everything that they need to do the project. But that is, we here at Webcheckout know that we don't manage all that, the form, the approval, all that information, right? Again, what you're doing outside of Webcheckout. And that is our next discussion topic for about our development partnership. So we'll go into kind of the vision and what we're the plans for Greenlighting in the next session to really get into what Chris was speaking about, and then hopefully Mark too, kind of bringing processes back into the system. But before we go into that, Ryan, you've been patiently waiting. Please.
No problem. Thank you again for your presentation. I was curious, kind of stemming off of that, like, do you become the hub then of like, how do you know that the safety approval has come through and the risk management approval has come through? Is that team of students submitting information via the Greenlighting, or are they handing you something?
No, that's a great question. So they will go and, that project request form, that's a separate form that sort of just starts a project for them. And then they have their project and it's yellow lit and they can make their reservations, but they can't actually check anything out until, we see the signed form with the safety supervisor and the faculty signature. And really right now, we have it as there's a box folder on the box, server. And when it's done and complete, they'll put it in there. And yes, I do have to go and manually look to see like, hey, this student's checking out. Usually they'll email me, or usually they'll be, like, hey, I made this reservation, and they'll be coming in and asking all their questions or something like that. And oh yeah, I put it on the box folder, and that's fine. And I'll go and check it. Usually, or often other times I'll just, like maybe we do everything sort of 24 hours in advance. We try to, people can't reserve within 24 hours, so we can start prepping orders. And so when they get to that 24-hour mark, we'll go and we'll look, and when we go to start to prep something, we'll see if it's yellow lit or if it's green lit. And if it's still yellow lit, we'll go and see like, hey, is it in the folder? It's not in the folder. Well, then we won't prep it, and I will send an email that says, hey, you have this reservation still, but you haven't finished the form. Where is it? And whatever the case may be. But yeah, it does involve the student coming and telling us basically to look there. There's nothing that I'm not monitoring my email inbox or anything like that for that. So
I'm curious, Mark, is that the preferred process, that you do want that face-to-face conversation that at that point of the project or at that point of your workflow?
I don't think that it's always necessary. I think that it's just the course of things. It usually does, happen that way, just because usually when people are doing these big projects, they have more than just questions about safety. They have questions about, is this available? Can I use this or whatever? So usually we're in conversation with them. But I would just say that otherwise, as long as they're okay with it, we wouldn't prep it until 24 hours in advance. So just putting it up on that folder, posting it that it's all done, and us checking it when we go to prepare the order works fine.
Great. Okay.
That answers the question.
Thank you. Great question, Ryan. Any other questions for Mark while we have his time?
All right.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, thank you again, Mark. And that's a great lead into our next topic, our development partnership for Greenlighting. Lee, would you like me to share my screen or you want to share yours?
No, I'll share mine.
All right, great. So give us a moment here. And so joining us for our next session here is now Lee Aries. He's our main developer and CTO. And go for it, Lee.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I've already screwed up here by advancing. Yeah, so I wanted to, first of all, Mark, thank you so much for that presentation. I actually learned a bit about our software from listening to you, and there's a couple of things I might, if you are amenable, might like to reach out and talk to you about. So as Glenn said at the beginning here, or maybe he didn't say this explicitly, but certainly part of his thesis, developing software like this is a bit of an exploration. We are exploring the space along with you, trying to figure out how best we can serve your workflows, how best we can integrate with your workflows, and how best we can capture the spirit of what everybody does. Any application that becomes hyper fit to one university's set of procedures is not going to be helpful for everybody else. But if we can figure out what those commonalities are and figure out how we can build the system that will allow you to make those decisions and to implement the workflows that you want to do. This is all a learning process for us. And actually, I kind of wanted to start this out by saying, I think we're probably going to, you might see some rebranding here in the next release as we talk about things like Greenlighting and projects. And let me go into why we're thinking that. So first of all, we'll start with the context where we are right now, or where Webcheckout comes from. Webcheckout was designed to be patron-based circulation. You have students who are checking out equipment and you for themselves, for a class, for their personal use, however they're going to be using it, but you are doing patron-based circulation. Everything, their capabilities, their limits, if you're doing billing, how they're billed, these are all related to a specific person all the time. And to Mark's point, that can be it can be difficult to differentiate why certain things happen, and certainly it becomes more difficult, say, to provide access to things in certain contexts and not in others. Though as we have progressed over time, we've made efforts. You will see as the history of our application develops, you will see us trying to solve this problem in various ways. For example, the course or event title on allocations, giving us some mechanism to tie into what course the allocation is for, or just a textual description of it or something along those lines. And while these have been helpful, they have proven to be somewhat lacking, not necessarily completely solving the problem. So that's why we introduce projects. Now, we have been talking about projects, and we've been talking about Greenlighting for some time now. And as one does in software, we finally get out what we call an MVP, something that serves the purpose, so we can see how it gets used. We can see where those edges are and see how we can expand on it, how people are going to use it. Again, part of this exploration of the development of software. So projects have given us this. If we continue to think about patrons, we try to knock this into the model of patrons, it's given us a much richer concept of a patron. We've separated that patron from a specific person, or we've separated the user of the equipment from a specific person. And now you can do these various projects. I was really interested to hear you talk about the travel and checking things out to the travel group. That's that's a neat use and a good example. And I've been coming up with a list of various things that can be thought of as projects, whether that's some event on campus, or your student body government, or some student club or organization that you want to manage and check equipment out to. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. Sometimes I confuse myself. I apologize. So the interesting thing about projects is that you might have different people at different times. If you're thinking about the student body government, if you want to track everything that they have checked out over the past, 10 academic years, obviously, as a degree granting institution, you're kind of hoping that you don't have the same person there for 10 years. So that membership is going to change over time, but you've still got this mechanism to tie those allocations together, to report on what the student government needed for a particular presentation or a particular event 2 years ago. And it creates this better way or a richer way to associate these allocations to one another. And again, these projects can be tied to a specific group or section. As you said, could be course-based. They can be independent. We've also heard from various schools that do circulate equipment to community groups. So if you've got a group of people, a church or some other organization outside of the university that makes use of your equipment, then creating a project that represents them gives you the ability to essentially manage this equipment, even though the various people you might be communicating with, or the actual group is not a student organization, or it's not a university organization. Obviously, you're going to need some kind of internal representative to manage this, but it again gives you a better way to organize that. It also gives you the ability to grant permissions and access that the individual members might not actually have. So back to the no more than 20 items unless you're using a project. That's a fantastic use of those policies, both to enforce the use of to enforce the use of projects, but also to allow for that smaller ad hoc circulation without needing to take all of that into consideration. That's an interesting one. And lastly, we've got if you are doing billing, you've got a separate accounting process for the organization or for your projects. So what we have discovered in putting this MVP out is that projects have their own value, and that there are situations where what we have conceived of as a really deep green lighting process may or may not be appropriate for all institutions or all situations, that projects do sort of have a life of their own or an existence of their own. So I think you're probably going to see in our communication, we're going to start separating projects and green lighting. And green lighting is the workflows. It's as Glenn said to us, a project is a noun and green lighting is a verb. And I think we're going to see that start to separate a little bit in our messaging and in the design of the application. So that brings us to what we want to do in the future with green lighting. So in my previous slide, I don't think I called it out, but this top line, we say, patron-based circulation is basically somebody reserves something, you approve it, you circulate it, and you go back and look at what happened. That's basically patron-based circulation. And roughly speaking, that still applies for projects as well, or can. A project can be used in that same mode. However, when we get into green lighting, we're talking about a much more sophisticated process potentially. And this is where the exploration comes in. This is where the making sure that we're solving the right problems is very important to us, and why we're going to be coming to you for information and help and working with you in order to really make sure we're solving your problems. So here we've got a deeper set of or a deeper process where you might have somebody come in, propose a project. So Mark, to your point, that is effectively what your project request form is. We would like to delve into the idea of doing that in Patron Portal, or in doing that if you are going to provide opportunities to the general public to use your equipment, for example. Is there value in integrating some of that into the public catalog, for example? Perhaps somebody from outside can view your catalog and right there in that interface propose a project that they would like to do. Obviously, there are a lot of questions that would come up around that. How do we provide access? How do we control who can and can't? How do we authorize adding new accounts? Or a bunch of problems crop up, and kind of looking forward to working through these with you. But we can provide, currently we've got project templates, we've got project types. So you can say, you can provide a list of project types that they might select. Anyway, so the project inception, I think, is the first big place where we can start to provide some value. And then once that project is proposed, if they've ticked all the boxes, if they satisfied what they need to do in order to begin requesting or begin reserving equipment, then that's when we would yellow light it. You would accept the project as a valid project and start gathering additional information. One thing that I would like to explore, and I think is very interesting, is in this project inception phase, I would like to take advantage of our new request functionality to allow an unaccepted or a non-yellow lit project to create that list, here are all of the items I'm going to want, when I'm going to want them. We can deal with questions of validation, availability, and so forth without actually reserving the equipment to a project that has yet to be accepted. So I think that's kind of exciting and something I'd like to explore. So next is gathering the information you need. You've got a project, and we routinely use film projects. They're a great example, but we could be talking about a trip to Ireland. We could be talking about an event on campus, a public speaker, or something along those lines. Any of these scenarios could be knocked into the same greenlighting mold. But with once you've got a project, now there might be information we need to gather. There might be specific types of forms that I need filled out for a specific type of project, or there might be specific forms that I need filled out based on the equipment that they're going to want to use, based on the facilities they're going to want to use, based on who they are, whether they're an internal patron or the general public, for example. So, and this is where it could get very exciting. We would like to create those forms like Mark created. We'd like to do that in Webcheckout. We'd like to give you the ability to define those things in Webcheckout and to attach those to your projects and to attach those to your allocations, possibly to your patrons or possibly to your courses. And the second big aspect of greenlighting is custom workflows. So if we need safety's approval, can the safety officer be a role in Webcheckout? So the project is created. One of the things we know we need is sign off from them. We create that workflow in Webcheckout. They get notification that something's waiting for them. They approve it. And if that's the only thing that stands between a yellow lit project and a green lit project, there's no reason the project couldn't just be green lit. We wouldn't necessarily need you checking your inbox to see if you've gotten the appropriate forms. We can build these workflows so that as long as the appropriate boxes are ticked, or the appropriate information is provided, or attachments are included, or any number of things, we can just move those projects along in their evolution. So that gives us this opportunity for, as I said, distributed approval. We might need for a specific project 4 different people to sign off on it, but we don't need to go and seek them out individually. This is not a sequence of approvals. It could be pending all 4 of them.
Mhm.
So a multi-path workflow is an interesting idea. Another big possibility that this brings up, and this is to Paul's question about integrating with Microsoft Teams, for example, or Slack or something else, is this gives us a great opportunity to explore how we can introduce better messaging, enhanced messaging in Web Checkout, and how we can get beyond the email model. I think this project provides us an awful lot of interesting avenues for looking at how to expand the capabilities of Web Checkout. It also has the potential to bring on a whole new set of users. So your patrons, you may have your patrons and you have your operators and you have your managers, but there's this new class of people, the approvers or various administrative roles. And I'm sure we're going to discover a lot of them as we work through specific workflows and the needs of the system. So as you can see, I mean, there are all these really interesting bits that we can add to Web Checkout. But every time we embark on something that big, there's a lot of risk there. If we are not confident that we are doing what our customers need and what it's going to satisfy the needs, it becomes difficult to start because of the risk of putting all of that time into the project and finding out that we haven't actually solved anybody's problems. So, boy, if we can engage with you, that would be great, and really, really dig into these problems and dig into them not one at a time, but rather more holistically. And in the context of this greenlighting project, I think it's just a fantastic vehicle for pulling a lot of this functionality into Web Checkout. So again, we're generally speaking, we're talking about circulating equipment. Now, it would be interesting to find out if there are use cases for projects that don't involve circulation. I'm open. Let's talk about that. That's great. But circulation is our bread and butter. It's where we come from. So we tend to think about that a lot. But again, now you are grouping these allocations, and we could do things like use workflows, use automation to create allocations based on the project, or to I don't know, draw from previous projects to build a structure of allocations. There's any number of things we can do, but I need to talk to you. I need to hear about how this would work for you in order to make sure we're going down the right path. And then, again, we have the ability to see what a project did, see the history of it, and use that for future projects. What did we not do right this last time? How can we revise our workflows? How can we revise our processes to better manage projects of that type in the future? So that's kind of the vision. That's where we are as far as thinking our way through the space. And I guess, Jeannie, do you want to get any questions or?
Before you go into questions, if you don't mind, just going to the next slide. I think Sean's gonna add some additional.
Yeah.
And then we can come back to questions. Yeah.
Y'all can tell that we have officially entered the very serious part of this demonstration. Now, thank you, Lee. So how happy am I about this? I'm pretty much euphoric. My team knows I've been talking about how I want this functionality for 6 years. I speak to a lot of schools all over the globe, and they've been requesting something like this for a while. I used to call it approvals. So some of you who I've spoken with, that's the phrase that I've used, but I used to think that this was just for film departments, but after more and more discussion, we realized it could be for a whole lot of things. We're still discovering what all it can be used for. It's very, very configurable. So, and I got a note, yeah, that this is a picture of my daughter and I at Mardi Gras. So, I'm using my daughter to embarrass her during this presentation. Do you mind going to the next screen? Thank you. So, as far as next steps go, this is a lot what Lee was talking about. We're looking for voices here. We're looking for a development partnership. Basically, this is a group of people who go ahead and invest in the module in advance, but in return for it, we need their voices. We'll be able to get your voices. You'll be able to communicate with Lee, because if we spend this much time on a large system like this, we have to get it right. And the only way that we're going to get it right is by having more of your thoughts, more of your vision involved in this as well. Now, AJ and I have you've probably heard from some of us. We've shopped around a little bit. We've discussed it with customers, but this was our opportunity to really put it out there in front of everybody that this is the route that we're intending on going. And we're intending on doing these discussions this summer. And the reason for that is because you guys, all of you are extraordinarily swamped in the fall, and you know it. And you're not going to have time to do this. Now's the time for the next couple months to have these discussions and figure out exactly what this thing's going to look like. So, Jeannie, or y'all mind going to the next slide?
Sure, it's very important.
It's extremely important. So, of course, I put contact me, but I also put a picture of my daughter's head on here because she is a teenager and I have to embarrass her. But what I would like to do is, if anybody is interested in joining this development partnership, I'd like you to send me an email and we can schedule some time and kind of evaluate this a little further, put this together, give you a very clear idea of what it's going to look like this summer. You know, it's straight up what kind of costs, things like that are going to be involved. But what I'd like to do is funnel everything over to me, and then we can go ahead and schedule some meetings on this. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address into the chat as well.
Yeah.
Just to make sure it's memorialized here.
Thanks, Sean. And I just want to add to this for next year, so the year 2025, as of now, we are dedicating our resources to see, this vision through, to see Greenlighting through. So we're planning for it, but as we said, we need the validation, we need your involvement to make sure we're on the right path. Of course, we also need your input. And while you will be spending a lot of time with Lee as part of this development partnership, you'll also be spending time with one another. We want to make sure the solution that we're providing will fit the big schools, the smaller schools, the different types of projects, all of the various operations that we support here today. But again, collaboration, communication, we all want to work here together, work on this together. So.
And thank you, Jeannie.
Sean.
That was my part of the story.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Lee. Thank you, Mark, too. Mark graciously also offered, if you would like to have further discussions with Mark, we can provide you his email address. I imagine some of you may have already connected with him on LinkedIn, but you can reach out to us and we can connect you with Mark. Before we cut out for break, does anybody have any questions for Lee, for Sean, for anyone here at Webcheckout before we take a little break here? Great. Wonderful. If you guys have any questions, obviously you can come back into chat. We will be, we'll pause this webinar. We'll actually end this webinar session, and then we'll start again in about, 53 minutes? Am I doing that math correctly? Yes, 53 minutes. So it's 1 p.m. Central Time. And then I'll allow you all to do that conversion yourself. But this afternoon, Nicole from Customer Care, she will kick it off with a demonstration of how to enhance emails with handlebar helpers, followed by Brittany Wood. She will review what every web checkout administrator should know. Then Lee will then present our roadmap for our next release of this year. And then just a brief closing remarks. So that's what you all have to look forward to this afternoon. All right, great. Thank you all. Thanks so much. We'll see you all in about 50 so minutes. Thank you. Begin. All right, welcome back, everyone. Web Checkout Annual User Symposium Part 2. So this morning we heard about the June 2024 release. We heard from Mark at the University of Texas at Austin, Moody College of Communication, and how they're using Web Checkout and projects or Greenlighting to manage equipment usage for their current projects. And then we also introduced our future plans, the vision for Greenlighting and this development partnership that we're looking for our customers to be involved in, really to validate the vision, work with us, work together so that we can provide, the future state of Greenlighting. Again, more communication, more collaboration, more transparency. So we appreciate all of your time, and we appreciate you extra if you came back to this afternoon session. We know it's a long day and you all have other commitments and people to that you're responsible for. So again, thank you very much. But this afternoon session, you see our agenda today. We will begin with Nicole from our customer care team. She'll be reviewing how to enhance emails with handlebar helpers, followed by Brittany, who will be reviewing what every Webco administrator should know. And then we'll end today with Lee, who will review our upcoming release of this year, our roadmap plans there, and then just a brief closing from us. But we won't keep you too long. And I'll turn it over to you, Nicole.
All right, thanks, Jeannie. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all having a great day so far. My name is Nicole Milner, and I'm a part of the technical support team here at Webcheckout. I recognize many of you from tickets you all send in, so happy to see all of your faces here. So like Jeannie said today, I'm going to be explaining and showing you how you can enhance your email templates with the use of handlebar helpers. So to start us off, what are handlebar helpers and what are they capable of? Basically, handlebar helpers are predefined functions that can be called from inside the handlebar templates, in this case, the email templates. The handlebars have different names, they have different parameters and return values, and they're basically mostly used to compare your data to get the results that you need. They can also be used, depending on what you would like in the email template, It can help reduce or expand the data you want returned, and it can assist with listing any values, but this will be mainly with allocation items. There are 3 helpers in particular that you can use to get the most out of Web Checkout, which we're going to go through today. And those are Boolean helpers, list helpers, and comparison helpers. All right, so first we're going to start off with some Boolean helpers. These are used to combine or exclude keywords, and it'll help reduce and expand the data you want to be returned. So to start off, there are 3 arguments that can be used with the Boolean helpers. So there is not, which returns the Boolean opposite of its argument. Basically, if the argument is true, it'll return false. And if it's false, it'll return true. Then we have and, then we have and this returns true if all of its arguments are true. And finally, we have or, which returns true only if one of its arguments is true. So, and then we have a little bit of a picture here to help explain that Boolean logic. So moving on, here we have some examples. So the first example is right here is the not example. So here we can see if the allocations patron name does not equal patron 1, it will return the message, welcome to Web Checkout. Otherwise, if it does not equal this, the patron name does not equal patron 1, it's going to return a different message, which will be see you soon. So we can see here, since the argument is true, it'll return this. If it's not true, it will return the second message. Below right here is the and example. For this one, if the allocations patron name is student Dallas, and the patron also has the patron class of graduate 1, then the message returned would be a new student. For this example in particular, we don't have an else, so if it does not equal both of these, then it's not going to return anything. No message will be returned. But again, and is true if all the arguments are true. So these both would need to be in the allocation. And then finally, we have the or example, which is right here. It may just be a little small, but we can see here there are 2 arguments, but since the or Boolean is in use, the result will return true only if one of the arguments is true. So basically, if the unserialized cluster count is greater than 6, then it will return a list of clustered resources. Next, we're going to go through the list helpers. These are meant to be used with list of values, specifically with allocation items. In this list, you'll see we have 2 main helpers, which are the length and includes. Length will be the number of items in a list, while includes is used if a list contains a provided item. Additionally, there's also some formatters. So these can be used to assist with the list of values. For instance, we have the date formatter. This will basically display date time in a readable way. So if you would like it to read as month, day, year, or if you use it in the other way, which is a lot of times year, month, day. Another one that's available to you is the duration formatter, and this can help with displaying durations in a readable value. So anything from listing something is 45 minutes late, or if you even want to get really specific, you can say 2 hours, 3 minutes, and 4 seconds. So the duration formatter can be used as well in your templates to get that integer as a readable value to the user. There's also a couple others like the barcode data URL and as well as the QR code data URL. So these will convert the string value to a URL encoded either barcode image or a QR code image and an image tag. And then also there is the include file, which can insert contents of a file on the file system into the template. Which then leads us to the list helper example. So for this one, we are going to be using includes for this example. So remember, for includes, it's true if the list contains the provided item. So in this example, if the allocation includes the resource accessory power cord, then it's going to return the message, yep, another power cord 4. And as you can see here, this means it's going to list the name of the resource. Then finally, this brings us to our comparison helpers. And these are mainly used in our if-else statements in order to assist you with comparing your data to get the results you need, depending on what information you would like in the templates. So the first one is EQ, which is equal. And this is basically asking, are the arguments equal? So this works for numbers, but it can also be used for strings, which is text values, as long as the case is exactly the same. And we've actually seen this helper used before already, specifically when we were covering the Boolean helpers. So we can see here we are already using equal. So we're already a bit familiar with it. Okay, the next one is greater than. If the value is greater than or equal, we have as well to our disposal, less than, and then less than or equal as well. So here is our comparison helper example. So below right here is the HTML, and this is what the result would be in the template. So in this example, we're going to be using the equal helper. In this use case, we are using a string with the equals helper. So if the action of the allocation is equal to checkout, then it will list the name of the resource on the allocation. And so we can see in this result that since the allocation was checked out and therefore the action is checkout, the result of the resource name is being listed here on the template when it's being sent out. And actually this example used here with the equals comparison helper in particular is going to come in handy for some updates to custom email templates in the June 2024 release. So with the introduction of request in version June 2024, which I'm sure many of you are excited about, changes will need to be made to custom email templates. So if any of you use the default email templates, you do not have to worry. This is going to be only for those using the custom email templates. So these changes can be made either post-upgrade or pre-upgrade if an instance is running version December 2023. And making these changes to the email templates on December 2023 will not cause any disruptions. Again, these changes only need to be made if you're planning on enabling requests when you upgrade to June 2024, and if you have customized email templates. So there are about 14 templates that will need to be updated, but we have created a guide to assist you with this change. This document is on our community site already, so please make sure to register if you have not already. I'm actually just going to give you a quick peek at this doc. It's right here. It's a full step-by-step guide. We have listed the name of the templates you'll need to change, what it would look like in the code block before, and the changes you will need to make after. So even though this document is our community site, we do realize that sometimes you may need some further assistance. So we are happy to help with the use of professional services. And also not only can these professional services be used to help assist with these changes to the templates, but we can also brand your email templates. So here you'll see a couple of examples that we created with some of our clients' colors and logos, just to give you a few examples of what your templates can be and what they can become. So if you're ever interested in, needing the help with transitioning those changes with requests on the new templates, or if you're even interested in branding, make sure to reach out to our customer success team for more information. We are also planning an additional webinar to explain the changes to the email templates. And Jeannie, I believe we said we're planning this for July 17th. Is that right? Okay.
You got it. Yep.
This is planned for July 17th, but we're going to reach out if more information becomes available.
Questions? Thank you, Nicole. You made it look so easy. And I'm not very technical. I know just enough to be dangerous. And I know the email template editor, it's available to web checkout administrators now. And as Nicole mentioned, you can, if you do plan on using enabling requests and you want that request information in the email, you'll want to be sure to update your email templates, and you can do that before the upgrade or even after the upgrade. All right. All right. Asa has a question. Do you have a doc that lists all the available variables?
Yes, we do. We do have a email template documentation. I actually was going to show that here. It's the email template manager doc. So right here we have, how to create a custom template set, how to create email templates, and then we even have more information on the helpers and even different examples for different use cases that may be useful to you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks, AJ, for chatting that link. And Asa, does that address your question?
Yeah, thank you, AJ.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions or any questions for Nicole about about email templates or handlebar helpers? All right. Asa with the maybe response. Hey, you know where to reach us, Asa, if you have any questions. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Nicole. And just no other questions? All right, great. Thanks, Nicole. We will now open it up to Brittany, who will walk us through what every web checkout administrator should know.
Very exciting. After Nicole just demonstrated why she is technical support and I am not. Great job, Nicole. I'm so impressed. All right, folks. So bear with me for one moment as I get my slides up and ready. All right, hopefully you folks should now be able to see my presentation up on the screen. If you cannot, let me know in the chat. All right, so good afternoon and thank you so much for joining me today. For those of you I haven't worked with yet, my name is Brittany Wood and I am an implementation manager over at Webcheckout. Now, I've worked with a lot of people just looking at the list today, so I have had the pleasure to train many of you and to help implement your departments. But today, who we're really here to focus on are our new folks that are newly working with Webcheckout. So over the past year, we've really welcomed many new Webcheckout admins, and they've taken over the responsibility of existing checkout centers and departments that are already using Webcheckout. So while I haven't really had the opportunity to work with all of these folks individually, my goal today is to help provide these new users with just skills they need to be successful to really manage Webcheckout effectively. All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the agenda, just so you know what to expect throughout the next 40-ish minutes of our session today. So we're going to start by defining exactly what a web checkout admin is. So hopefully you can identify yourselves within some of these descriptions. We're then going to introduce a new web checkout admin assessment tool just to help you better assess your skills in web checkout. We'll then take a look at organizations, checkout centers, and modules that are installed into your instance. And then we'll dive into really the building blocks of web checkout. We'll take a look at the data within web checkout. So we'll learn more about and define what we call people, groups, resources, and resource types. And we'll learn how to use find screens and detail screens to search for information and to update information within web checkout. And then finally, we'll end our session by just reviewing how to configure web checkout. And we'll learn more about settings and policies and how to apply updates to make sure that you have the most up-to-date version of web checkout. So with that, again, we'll be highlighting some key terms, but specifically looking at global organization and checkout center settings within the application. And we'll wrap up by just addressing some key takeaways and hopefully, if we have time, be able to answer any of your questions. All right, So first, let's describe exactly what a web checkout admin is. So a web checkout admin is essentially a person that takes ownership over a checkout center, an organization, or the entire instance of web checkout. And they're really responsible for maintaining the integrity of web checkout and really demonstrating the skills in order to do so. So they may be required to update settings, policies, or even data, just depending on emergent needs at your institution. And then finally, they are the folks that really define and manage those workflows on a daily basis. So they are taking that leadership role in defining those workflows. Now, these are just a few examples of web checkout admins that I've worked with in the past. So a web checkout admin could potentially be a checkout center manager that's responsible for ensuring all equipment is circulated and maintained within web checkout. A web checkout admin could also be a department lead who's responsible for ensuring that all of their departments for checkout centers are using web checkout according to their specific standards. And then finally, a web checkout admin could also be a more technical product owner in the IT department who's responsible for updating web checkout and really ensuring that individual departments are able to successfully use web checkout. They have all of their major needs addressed through web checkout. So of course, the exact scope of your role might be a little bit different, but I hope you're able to identify yourselves within some of these examples here today. All right, so now that we know a little bit more about what a web checkout admin is, how do we actually know if we're able to manage web checkout effectively, or if we have the skills to do so? Well, this brings us to our brand new web checkout admin assessment tool. So this is just a small tool that I created to help web checkout admins to assess their own skills as an administrator. Now, reviewing this assessment tool, we're happy to share this with you after our presentations are complete today. But within this admin assessment tool, we've broken up these skills based upon if you manage a checkout center, if you manage an organization, or if you manage a global instance or system-wide, if you're a system-wide administrator of web checkout. Within each of these admin levels, we've created a list of kind of essential skills that we hope you're able to really demonstrate and manage within the application. And we've also provided just a short little grading system so you can grade your own skills or other admin skill levels, all the way from none to an advanced skill level. And just to help you out, we do provide a skill level key in the introduction to this tool. Now, as you're taking a look at these skills and as you're learning more about web checkout today, we do provide you with documentation as well. So that way you're able to just review information as you're learning more about web checkout. Now, keep in mind, this is just a starting point. This does not include every module of web checkout, nor is each administrator required to know these specific tasks. This is just a starting point that we can provide you with to help you be successful and to learn more about web checkout. All right, so now that we've seen this tool, rather than looking at this spreadsheet all day, we're actually going to dive into web checkout, which should hopefully be a bit more fun. And we're going to start by learning how to really use web checkout, define some of those key terms, and understand how to navigate across the system. All right, so we're going to start with very, very basics. Currently, I'm logged into web checkout. This is the main administrative interface of web checkout. So this is where administrators such as yourselves work day in and day out. This is where you'll manage your settings, your policies. This is where you'll include data into web checkout. Now, outside of this main admin interface, you may also have access to additional interfaces or apps within the application, which you can see by clicking on this apps menu right here. All right, now the first time you log into web checkout, you will be presented with this front page. And I like to think of this as kind of a hub for activity in the checkout center or circulation activity within the checkout center. When you log in, you should be able to see your outgoing reservations for the day and your incoming checkout centers for the day. Now, as we're learning more about the application, one of the key takeaways that I hope you folks take is that the main way we're going to navigate across these settings and the data that we're learning about today is by using these menus provided near the top of the screen. So over in the top left-hand corner, you'll notice that the first 4 icons or 5 icons will allow you to create and manage allocations, so circulation within the application. The menus for allocations, people, resources, authorizations, etc., will help you to look for information and create new information. And we'll look at those in more depth a little bit later. However, where most folks who are learning more about their existing checkout centers or departments will find themselves is actually within this admin menu, because this admin menu is going to house your administrative settings for web checkout and your configurations of web checkout. So this is typically where new users do find themselves as they're either setting up their checkout centers or learning more, right, about their checkout centers. So with this, we're going to start with the very basics by looking at exactly what checkout centers and organizations are installed into your instance. Now, if you're following along, you can take a look to see which checkout centers and organizations are on your instance by navigating to admin. And I like to use this Find Checkout Centers option. Now you'll notice that the first time you navigate to a find page, you're not going to see any results immediately. So you will need to select this blue find option in order to populate those results. But after you select find, you should see a report that is displaying all of the current checkout centers using web checkout at your institution, as well as their managing organizations. Now, especially if you're a system-wide or global administrator, this is something super important to familiarize yourself with, so you know exactly which departments or checkout centers are using web checkout at your institution. Now, just to better define these, checkout centers are typically the locations that equipment is managed out of. So as you log into web checkout, you will notice that you log into a checkout center and you'll work within a checkout center. Again, with the key purpose being to either manage or circulate your equipment. Now, each of these checkout centers are also assigned to an organization. And an organization is typically the managing department of the checkout center. So organizations could have one or multiple checkout centers that we manage. So you'll take, let me zoom in a little bit. But if we take a look in my instance, you'll notice that this web co-production orgs does have 4 different checkout centers that are managed within this organization. As an administrator, we could have a person or an admin that is only responsible for managing the web co-production center, or they could be responsible for managing all 4 centers within the org. And at a larger scope, we could have that global admin that is responsible for ensuring all 10 of these checkout centers are able to use web checkout. All right, so again, I do recommend if you're new, just reviewing this information just for your own knowledge, so you know who's using web checkout. Additionally, this will be important as we learn more about data and settings, because some settings are configured at the checkout center, others at the org, and others globally within the application. Now, in addition to looking at the basics of which checkout centers and organizations are installed in the instance, the other thing that I recommend familiarizing yourself with right up top is just what modules are installed on your instance of web checkout. Now, the simplest way to review this is again within this admin menu. All right. And if we select admin global settings, we will be able to view our list of modules. Now, only global admins with Alter systems will be able to access this information. So if you're not able to view this information, it does mean that you don't have the appropriate capabilities. But our team is always happy to help if you need more information about which modules are installed. Now, once we navigate to admin global settings, you will see several different tabs. We'll take a look at these in more depth a little bit later. But if we select this modules tab, here you're able to view a list of installed modules on your instance. And modules are important just to know what's installed on your instance, because this does provide additional functionality into the application. And as you're reviewing our documentation or even reviewing old videos from previous webinars, you will notice that we do highlight if a module is required for certain functionality. All right, so starting out at a base level to understand what you need to know, I do recommend just assessing the scope of web checkout. Are you managing multiple centers, an entire organization, or the entire global instance? And what modules are installed? So what type of functionality do you need to be aware of, or should you be able to manage? All right, so now that we have addressed just a few basics, we're now going to take a look at different types of data or the basic data that can be included in web checkout. And we'll start by just defining some key terms to make sure we're speaking the same language. All right, so in web checkout, there are 4 key terms that I want to introduce you to. Those key terms are resource, resource type, people, and then groups and authorizations. These are 4 different types of data that most folks that implement web checkout are required to include just to be successful with the application. So these are the 4 items we'll highlight. There are other types of data such as certifications and allocations that we won't highlight as much today. All right, now to better highlight exactly what these key terms are, to define these key terms, we're going to look in web checkout and begin with resources and resource types. All right. So hopefully now you should see me back into the application. And I'm going to start within the new allocation screen just to highlight and define again what a resource and a resource type is. All right. So this is a new allocation screen. Hopefully for many of you, this does look familiar, at least if you circulate equipment. Now, whenever you're building an allocation, either within web checkout or within the patron portal, you will be able to view what we call the catalog. And the catalog is essentially a visual representation of resource types. Now, resource types are your categories of equipment, and they help you to create this clickable, nested structure that you can view and browse through within the catalog. Now, again, resource types are your categories of equipment or locations. They can be viewed within the catalog, either here within web checkout, or they may also be viewed within patron portal. Now, resource types are significant, not only because they make this user-friendly interface that you can see right here, but resource types are significant because you can apply policies, your usage roles, as well as authorization requirements onto these resource types. So the key thing to understand when we use that term resource type is we're talking about your categories of information, or your categories of equipment and locations within the applications. These categories can totally be built by you. They can be edited by you. So one of the key takeaways I hope you take today is if you do not like the way your categories are currently laid out, if there's no consistency between the naming conventions, or if they just are not organized in a way that you would like to see in Web Checkout and Patron Portal, you do have the ability as an admin to edit these categories that you see right here within the catalog. So again, your resource types are your categories. You can definitely edit these and modify these as needed. Now, in addition to resource types, the other key term we're going to highlight is resources. And resources are the individual pieces of equipment or the locations that you actually manage or circulate within Web Checkout. So all of these Canon kits, these are the items that I might check out. These are the items that I might inventory, or these are the items that I might update the condition note and condition grade on, just to figure out what needs to be replenished in the following year. All right, so first two key terms, resources and resource types. They are the building blocks of your inventory and Web Checkout. And shortly, we will highlight this resources menu right here, which will house options allowing you to search for resources and resource types, and also to edit those resources and resource types. All right, now in addition to resources and types in Web Checkout, we also need to include people and groups. So just to highlight this again within the allocation, your people data is essentially any folks that will interact with your inventory. This could include people that you circulate equipment to. So if you check out equipment to students and staff and faculty, they should all be included within your people data. Now, groups, on the other hand, are used to grant access to restricted equipment, restricted checkout centers, or restricted patron portal. And we're able to enroll people into those groups or add people into those groups. And again, you will see that there is a menu option for each of these. So under people, you'll see options to search or find people, and also options to create new people. And under authorizations, the authorizations menu, you'll see an option to search for groups and also create new groups within the allocation. All right, so 4 key terms, which are essentially the building blocks of Web Checkout. Resources and types help you to build out your inventory. And then people and groups are the folks that interact with your equipment, and groups authorize them to use specific types of equipment or specific checkout centers. Now, within these menus, once again, you will see options that allow you to search for information and create new. Now, of course, under people, you can search for people, create new people. Under resources, you are able to search for resources, search for resource types, and of course, you're able to create new resources and types. Same for authorizations. Here, you're able to create new groups. Now, as a Webco admin, you need to understand how to search for this information and create this information. Now, I do want to highlight that with people and groups specifically, people, when these folks are created or this person data is created within the application, that this is global. So with this pool of patrons that we have right here, all 10 of my checkout centers have access to the same people data. So in order to manage this effectively, best practices, we do typically recommend that this is managed globally, typically by the global admin. So of course, while you're able to create new people records using this new person option, You can also import person data, but many of our clients also opt for an integration module to allow this data to be created automatically. Groups, on the other hand, are slightly different. Groups are managed through the organization or the department in Web Checkout. Groups, again, can be created manually using this new group option. They can also be imported, but also many folks do use an integration module to create and refresh this data. Now we're specifically going to focus on resources and types, this menu right here, and we're going to learn how to use find screens to search for information and detail screens in order to update information within Web Checkout. So if you're following along, the key takeaway I want you to take is that each and every one of these menus do have a find option to allow you to search for information and build reports. So we're going to start by selecting resources, find resources. And here we're greeted with a find resource screen. Now your screen might look slightly different from mine. That's totally okay because these are customizable. However, to use any find screen, regardless of if it's the people, resource, or this authorization find screen, all of these work in a similar manner where you can add search terms to basically filter your results and result columns to define the columns of information that appear right here over in this reporting panel. So for this search today, I'm going to filter my results based upon the resource type. So I don't want to view all 1,100 of my resources. I only want to see all 13 of my Canon kits. So the way I was able to view that information is again by using a search term to filter our results. I'm then going to alter these result columns. And these result columns define the columns of information that we can see represented here within the reporting screen. So I'm going to alter these. I don't really need to see status, so I'm going to remove that by clicking the header to remove it from this included column. And instead, I'm going to review column headers found under excluded. And I'm going to include serial number and also condition grade. Now there are a lot of the result columns. They are alphabetically though. So as you're browsing through them, they will be organized alphabetically. All right, so now that I've selected this blue find button, we're able to browse through our results right here. So here we are viewing 13 resources of the type Canon 5D. I'm able to quickly review the resource type, checkout center, barcode, serial number, and condition grade. Now, using this reporting screen is not only great to search for information, but this is also great if your goal is to build reports or to update data. And the reason why I say that is because there is this export as feature on the top right-hand corner of the screen, where you have the option to export in multiple different formats. Usually I recommend exporting as a CSV if your goal is to build kind of a visual report, whereas I recommend using export as importable if your goal is to update this data and re-import into Web Checkout. Now, unfortunately, we don't have time today to review how to use those import files, but we are going to take a look at how we can edit some of this data manually within the application. So in order to edit, we do have to navigate to a detail screen, and the simplest way to do that is just by clicking on one of these resource IDs. Additionally, you can use this quick search to search for a specific item. And again, you'll just click the resource or the type that you want to manage. All right, so we're going to look at Canon 5D kit number 4. Now, every resource type, every person, and every group and allocation within the application does have its own detail screen. And a detail screen is essentially a record within Web Checkout. So you're able to click through these different tabs of information to view and update information. So just like you would have paper records in a filing cabinet, the same is true within Web Checkout, where you can browse and update that information. Now, as you're reviewing a detail screen, there is a lot of information that is contained here. So as you're familiarizing yourselves with some of these fields that are new to you, I would encourage you to click these question mark icons found throughout the application. This will take you to the Web Checkout community. And if you log in, because I was not logged in, you will be able to browse documentation that is specific to that detail screen. So this documentation will be able to define what these fields or these tabs, what information can be updated or viewed within those detail screens. And if you haven't signed up for the Web Checkout community, we'll drop that URL into the chat before the end of the day today. All right, now as we're browsing through this detail screen, updating information within Web Checkout can be quite simple, right? Many fields can be updated simply by updating, right, the field by typing in new information. So I'm going to simply add in a manufacturer and then click this green button to save. However, some of the fields do have specific requirements. So that is why I always recommend reviewing documentation if you're new to these fields within Web Checkout. So for example, resource ID and barcode, these are referred to as unique identifiers, meaning they must be unique and there can be no duplications within Web Checkout. So we always have to be mindful of those requirements as we're updating information within Web Checkout. Now, one of the updates I want to make today is applying a new barcode. Again, barcode is a unique ID, so the barcode that is included in here cannot be duplicated or added to any other resources within the application. All right, now the other, now of course, edits can be performed within many of these tabs. The other key feature I do want to highlight is just condition node and grade. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my condition as good. All right. So as you're editing data within Web Checkout, again, I recommend reviewing documentation if you're new to a field, just so you understand exactly what you are updating. However, you are able to update all resources, resource types within the application. Of course, you do have the ability to modify people and groups, but that might require modifications to import files or to nightly integration files in order to update that successfully. But you do have the power to make changes to existing data within the application. All right. Now, in addition to being able to search for information and edit information using these menus, you can also create new. So of course, again, you can use those import files, which we don't have time to use today. But you'll see under resources, there is an option to create new equipment and new locations. You'll also see options to create new resource types. So you are able to build out new information using these options found within each related menu option in the application. So if we know that we have a brand new Canon camera, we can create a new resource type using new resource type, and then add new equipment using new equipment. However, there are also a few shortcuts that are built within the application. So I want to highlight those for you today because I'm a huge fan of shortcuts. So again, if we go back to that example, if we have a brand new Canon that is released in 2025 and we need to add it to our existing Canon resource type, we're able to quickly and effectively do that by navigating or searching for that existing Canon resource type, navigating to the detail screen, and then within the admin tab for both resources and resource types, you will find shortcuts under this action headers, which allow you to more quickly create resources and types. All right, so if I know I need to add in 2025's best-selling camera for Canon, we can easily create that by selecting create a new subtype of this type. And immediately a new resource type is created. And again, because we're in a detail screen, we can just begin by editing this information directly. So we're going to call this our Canon 2025. I'm not sure what type of a camera Canon will release in 2025, but we'll make sure to give this a user-friendly name regardless. We can update and apply additional information, again, throughout these different tabs. And to add a resource, again, you'll find shortcuts right here under actions, and we can just create a new resource of this type. And keep in mind that anytime we see that resource IDs do need to be unique, so I'm going to be mindful of that by just incorporating a numeric identifier. All right. So the key takeaways from this portion, again, you can search for information and create new information by using each of these menu options found within the top navigation in Web Checkout. All right. So now that we've done just a brief overview of data in Web Checkout, and I do want to highlight that this is quite brief, we're going to take a look at settings within the application. All right, so I'm going to navigate back to the front page, and I just did that by clicking this Web Checkout icon. And we're going to take a look at this admin menu. Now, this admin menu, once again, is going to house the majority of your administrative settings within the application. And these are going to be organized based upon if these are global, so your system-wide settings, organization-wide settings, so settings that apply to the overarching organization of centers, or individual checkout center settings within the application. So again, if you're interested in updating settings, policies, the way that Web Checkout is configured, this can be found here within this admin menu. So we're going to start by just highlighting some key features within global, organization, and within the checkout center level. So again, I'm going to start under admin, global settings, and again, these are our system-wide settings within the application. And here's where you can find that modules list, which we reviewed earlier, but we are going to skip over to one of my favorites, which is the updates tab. So this updates tab are where our global administrators are able to apply patches or JavaScript updates to the application. So part of being a global administrator is having the ability to apply patches or JavaScript updates just to ensure that your instance is kept up to date. Now, currently, I do not have any patches available, so I'm not able to demonstrate that today. If there are patches or updates available, you will see those listed under core updates or under JavaScript updates. And by clicking on the checkbox next to each, you can install, and you will be required to schedule a restart in order to apply those patches or core updates. Now, when you are applying updates, you can schedule these to occur overnights or on weekends just to ensure your users aren't impacted by this downtime. So again, if you are a global admin, you will want to ensure that you're applying these patches and JavaScript updates on a regular basis. Web Checkout will indicate that new patches are available. Using this bell icon, there will be a red flag that displays. Now, one thing I do want to highlight here too is that this is only where you can apply those patches and JavaScript updates. This is not, though, where you would upgrade Web Checkout. So if you are ready to upgrade to the latest and greatest version that AJ did demo this morning, you will unfortunately be unable to do that through this area of the application. So please make sure you're reaching out to support, especially if you're a global admin early in summer, so folks have time to transition to this new version. All right, now outside of this updates tab, my other favorite global feature is custom properties. Custom properties really allow you to customize those fine screens and detail screens that we took a look at earlier. They also provide a way for you to add in additional fields into Patron Portal so you can capture more information within your allocations. So custom properties must be added globally. So a global administrator would be responsible for applying these. Now I am going to demonstrate or show off one of my custom properties just using this new canon that we created earlier. Because in all of my resources, I've incorporated a custom property called lens mount, where I'm able to just select if this item is an EF or F mount. And by including this custom property, I'm able, of course, to provide this information within Web Checkout. But also if we navigate back into those fine screens we were using earlier, I can search by that lens mount custom property. So I can go ahead and specifically search for the items with that particular lens mount. So again, as a Web Checkout admin, if you were hoping to capture additional information within the application, we do provide you with the tools to be able to incorporate that into Web Checkout. So again, this is the global detail screen. This is where you can edit system-wide settings or configurations within the application. We unfortunately don't have time today to review all of these tabs, but again, if you are a global admin, I would encourage you to review the docs prior to making any changes here, just because they do impact all checkout centers and all organizations. So there is quite a bit of change as we're updating these. All right, next we're going to take a look at some of our organization settings. So if we navigate to admin organization, these settings here will affect all checkout centers within the organization. So what I always encourage new admins to do prior to making any changes here, so as you're just getting oriented to Web Checkout, is to click on the Centers tab, just so you remind yourself which checkout centers will be affected prior to making this change. So at any point, you are able to just browse and view which checkout centers are affected by these organization settings. And for those of you with an enterprise license, you also do have the ability here to add in new checkout centers on an as-needed basis if you have that enterprise license. All right, so again, we don't have time to review all of these tabs, but I am going to highlight some of the major configurations you will need to know in order to be successful within the application. The first one I like to highlight is operators. So operators is how you can grant access to this admin interface of Web Checkout. So in order to access the Web Checkout admin interface, people must be added as operators here within the organization operators tab. So this goes back to our earlier conversation about people data. Before we're able to employ operators, we do need to ensure that these folks are first added within this people data in web checkout. All right, once those folks are included, you are able to add operators, searching by first or last name, user ID. You could even search by another unique identifier such as barcode. And from here, once you've searched for the correct person, this will add folks to this list of operators. From here, we'll click on the user's name. Once again, bringing us into the person details screen. And from here, we can view and update operator information, including employing folks at specific checkout centers, and even defining which capabilities they're assigned. And as you're employing folks to work within the checkout centers, I do want to highlight that we have many capabilities. So we do get quite granular to define what exactly an operator can and cannot do. All right. In addition to knowing how to add operators, so to grant access to really work within the application, the other item that I do want to highlight are policies. So policies are going to be found throughout the organization and checkout center detail screen. And you'll see them within this allocations tab, this resource types tab, the patron portal tab. So you will see them kind of throughout the application, but it's pretty easy to distinguish what a policy is because they will quite literally be called policies within the application. And I always like to highlight these to new users because policies allow you to define your usage rules. All right, so policies allow you to define your usage roles. However, policies may be set at the organization, the checkout center, or even the resource type level. So it is important to just be mindful as you're making adjustments to these policies. Policies that are set at the organization level will trickle down to checkout centers and to resource types. However, that policy enforcement does occur from the bottom up. So any policies that are set at the resource types or at the checkout center level will be enforced over these organization policies. So again, policies allow you to define your usage roles. So how long equipment can be used, how often it can be checked out. And you will see these policies set throughout the application on many of these different tabs. All right, now the final unique set of settings I do want to highlight in the org details screen is this messaging tab right here. And the reason that I like to highlight this at the organization level is because this is where your email template editor lives. So if you were watching Nicole's presentation earlier today, where she reviewed how to use those handlebar helpers, this is where you actually access that email template editor, where you're able to update and edit those email templates. Now, this does require a bit higher level admin capabilities, so you will need to be an organization admin, and you will need to have the edit templates capability as an operator. But just be mindful that this is managed through the organization, and you do have the ability to edit these templates within the application. All right. So again, just a few highlights at the global and organization level, and navigating down now to admin checkout center. These settings right here are the specific configurations that affect your checkout center. And I like to think of these being almost the most impactful when it comes to actually circulating equipment within your checkout center. So if you are a new admin, especially a checkout center admin that is really responsible for managing and circulating equipment, I would recommend just taking the time to make sure all of this information listed here is accurate and correct. So this Checkout Center General tab, this is where you can update and view contact information. And this is important because this will display in the patron portal. It can be included on printed forms, and it can even be included on emails. So even though this is more basic information, it's quite impactful because it kind of displays in different aspects throughout the application. The Operations tab is where you can define your reservation or allocation workflows within the application. So if you want to be able to require a barcode scan at pickup or return, or if you want to use that fancy new request feature that AJ was showing today, you would need to modify these Checkout Center operation settings in order to define your workflows within the application. Now again, in the Allocations and Resource Types tab, this is where you can view those same policies. So similar or the same policies that we saw at the organization level. Keep in mind that any adjustments made to these policies at your Checkout Center will override those organization policies. All right, and then finally, I do want to highlight just these printing and messaging tabs. This printing tab does allow you to update a customized agreement form, and messaging is where you can enable or disable certain emails within your Checkout Center. All right, so again, even though Checkout Center, it's not quite as high level as those global or organization settings, with your day-to-day operations, these are going to end up being the most impactful. So definitely make sure these are kept up to date from semester to semester. And while we are talking about new semesters, the final item I want to highlight is your Checkout Center calendar. This Checkout Center calendar defines your hours of operation for your Checkout Center, basically telling Webcheckout when you're open for business or closed on weekends and holidays. So while this is one of the more basic settings, it's very often overlooked, especially as we go into new semesters or we have new folks that join Webcheckout as administrators. So as you're prepping for the upcoming fall semester, I do recommend taking the time just to ensure you have some hours of operation set. As you can see, I don't have any hours set for July. However, it's quite simple to set these hours. You can either begin by selecting the date within your calendar or selecting Create New Schedule. I'm going to highlight the entire month of July. And here, Webcheckout will open this Create New Schedule modal, allowing you to update and apply your schedule. All right, so again, you can access documentation to review how to update this by selecting this question mark icon. However, I do recommend everyone put a note on their calendar today just to remind themselves to add in these hours before the fall semester, just like I forgot to do for July. All right, folks. So that was my very brief overview on a very large application. So we are going to wrap it up by just taking a look at a few key takeaways. All right, so key takeaways for new admins or even existing admins. I do recommend that everyone does really take the time to understand your current implementation of Webcheckout. So keep in mind if you're coming into an existing Checkout Center as a new admin, settings, configuration, and data will already be set up. So I do recommend taking the time to learn how everything works and to see what actually is enabled. So that way you understand what needs to change as you have new goals. Additionally, I do recommend just periodically assessing yourself and and your team's skills when it comes to Webcheckout. So this will allow you to just identify areas for improvement or any learning gaps so you know which documentation to review or which training video you should review and basically where we can best assist. We also recommend using the web checkout community. I'll provide that link after I wrap up this session. If you haven't yet, please be sure to register for the web checkout community, because this is where you can review our documentation and our training videos in order to learn more about the application. And then finally, we do recommend working with your customer success manager, so that's AJ, to really assess your needs and create a customized training plan for your team, or to discuss options for us to provide you with this hands-on assistance if you need us to help with a heavy lift if a new admin is coming in. All right, so with that, thank you all so much for your time as I talked a lot about web checkout. But are there any questions?
Brittany, thank you so much. That was very thorough. Lots of great information, and it's a lot of good refresher for many of you who've been using web checkout for a long time. Sometimes you set it and forget it, but as Brittany said, it's nice to reassess and make sure all your settings are in line with your current policies. There were a few questions, so I'll read them aloud. So Stephanie asks, is there a way to edit the resource type of a resource while the resource is checked out without having to check it back in? And yes, both the resource and the resource type, so both the physical item that's checked out as well as the category, you can edit that information. You can edit many of the property details while they're allocated. I do believe, and Brittany, I'm sure you can add more information to this. There's a caveat with resources if they have components. So if it's a kit, you can't edit the kit, and you can't edit the circulation status. So you can't take something that's currently checked out and offline it. You have to return it and then change that status.
Correct. I'm going to stop my share. All right. The majority of information you should be able to edit while it's circulating, but there are specific fields you will be unable to edit. So if something's currently checked out, you won't be able to update the components, because web checkout wants to ensure everything comes back as it was checked out. Trying to think of other scenarios, but majority of information can be changed.
Yes. And if you have an older version of web checkout, it's possible you may not be able to change some of the resource properties currently, but that was a feature within the past, I want to say 2 or 3 years, that you can edit some of the resource properties. Thanks, Brittany. One more question in the chat, and then is there a way to bulk add via CSV files something to the subtype? So there's an example, you received 25 new Canon cameras under the resource digital cameras, and you want to add additional items. So in short, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So while Brittany did walk us through how to manually create items and how to manually create the categories within the application, anything that you can create, resources and resource types, you can actually create those via a spreadsheet, absolutely, through the import data application. So there should be a link within, when you're in web checkout, if you go to the top right, the tile menu, you should, if you have the operator capability to import data at your checkout center, you will then have the option to go to that screen and to upload your files. Right. We do have previous webinars about data imports too, and again, on the community site, all that information is available there. All right. And Paul, you have your hand up.
Yeah,
Hi.
thanks, Brittany, for going over the calendar, because that's something, we don't touch as often, maybe once a term. Now, can you remind me, is that only settable at the checkout center level, or could you set it at the org level so it basically covers all your checkout centers and just saving you time when you're setting that up?
So you will notice a calendar tab on both the checkout center and that org detail screen, but to set your hours of operation, they must be set at the checkout center. The organization is really there for terms or to communicate holidays. It won't actually open or close your center.
Got it.
Does
Thank
that
you.
answer your question? Excellent.
And there was another question from Asa. There's another question, and it's from Asa. Is there a way to mark an item as lost or stolen without checking it back in and sending the "you return this" email to the user? So at this point in time, no, web checkout does require you to return the item. We do understand that there is kind of this gap here in that you're returning it, but it's lost or stolen. Later today, we're going to talk about our roadmap and future plans. I'm sure this is something Lee can kind of touch base upon on this idea, putting you on the spot here, Lee, but what kind of future state or future vision of kind of decommissioning items is on the plans for web checkout. But currently, you have to return it so that you can mark it as offline and non-circulating. Right. And thank you, AJ. I saw that you uploaded or sent over the link for import data. Any other questions for Brittany? All right. So if you found that informative, and you can absolutely see that Brittany has a project management background with putting times in her agenda and without the level of information, this is, again, the one-on-one time you would get with Brittany, and she will understand your goals, what you're looking to achieve, and work with you to provide you the information so that you are able to do what you need to do to manage the system and, of course, all the processes that go along with it. All right. So if no more questions for Brittany, all right, we'll turn it over to Lee with discussion about our roadmap.
Hi, thank you. Starting off with Asa's question about taking items out of circulation without returning them. That is a known problem. I mean, we've been looking at that for some time, and the relationship of our scheduler to the state of resources and things like that. I have to be honest with you, I had never thought about from my perspective, I'd never thought about the implication of sending out the email message. The actual offlining, or I'm sorry, the actual marking something as lost has some deeper architectural implications, but to the point about not sending back the message as a response to that situation, that's something I'm definitely going to think about, and I'll have more about that once I've sort of absorbed that bit of information. So I basically just have a few slides about what we are planning for the next release. Now, as anybody who's ever engaged in the world of software development knows, plans and what we're actually going to deliver, they can be pretty different. But this is what we're talking about. This is what we're looking at right now for the next release. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. So, pardon me, jumped on the gun there. So for the next release, which I don't have a release date for, I know that's going to be one of the questions that pops up, so I'll get out in front of that one. With the introduction of with the introduction of requests, we see a lot of interesting opportunities. Probably the biggest one is being able to delay overrides. So AJ demonstrated that capability where if you've got an operator who doesn't have an override, and you don't necessarily have an administrator available, one of the things you could do there is convert it into a request. Also, our policy, the policies that we have in place, these powerful policies that some of which Brittany was going over and we were talking about, are one of the principal, one of the things our customers love about our application is the amount of control they have over who can, who can't, for how long, etc. And then as our authorization and certification systems become more sophisticated, or have become more sophisticated, we're giving even more control over who can access pieces of equipment, when they can access those pieces of equipment, and that sort of thing. These are all great controls, and puts a lot of power in your hands to manage your inventory. However, these controls do make some things a little difficult. So, for example, our policies, we have heard time and again, we have heard you, and we understand that the error messages that we give can be somewhat off-putting for your customers. We also note that if you have an override, you cannot save the allocation unless there is a manager on hand to hit that button and override those policies. If you edit the allocation, you might have to re-approve those policies. You will need, in order to save your edits, even if you've not done anything that impacts those specific validation issues, you are going to have those overrides again. And once again, you may have to do that at pickup. And while we've got, I know everybody's put workflows into place to deal with these, it can be a roadblock, and it can slow down the efficiency of your operations. Also, with the introduction of requests, we've got the ability to deal with some of these things. However, what we don't currently have is, why was the request made? If there was a policy violation that caused me to convert this allocation item into a request, we lose that information. So really the only reason or the only mechanism for understanding why it was made a request in the first place requires that you approve the request and then look at what validation errors that it introduces. And that's, again, that's a less than ideal workflow under the circumstances. So the goal that we're working on for the next release is to improve the relationship between validation and the specific item on an allocation. First of all, we do want to work on the messaging. We want to make those allocation messages or those error messages clearer, but we also want to make sure that it's obvious, or as obvious as possible, to the end user what it is they need to do in order to fix the problem. There are too many of this item, you need to remove 2, or convert 2 into a request, that sort of thing. The second big change that we're looking to make is to allow operators to actually save a reservation, even if they don't have the overrides. That would allow them to save it as a reservation, but not pick it up. The pickup would still require an override. So the equipment couldn't go out until the override was done. And this would, again, remove that need for an ever-present admin. You can have reservations that are pending override approval. Again, this would not apply to checkouts, and it would not apply to renewals. Anything that is actually circulating equipment is not going to be impacted. And then the last big change in this triptych of improvements is to be able to defer the approvals by essentially storing along with the line item why it requires approval. What that would mean is we could generate reports saying, here are the approvals that need to be done. Here's when they need to be approved. Here are tools for guiding administrators to deal with those. But it would also mean, for example, that you could distribute the capability to override certain characteristics of a reservation. So if you've got one person who's qualified to say it's okay if we exceed the aggregate value of this allocation, and a completely different person who's responsible for overriding usage times, then you can provide that capability to 2 different people. You can split that capability between 2 different people. They go to the allocation, they perform the approval, and the approval is persisted. So this also means that when we edit, we're not going to have to reapprove. It has already been approved. And finally, if we have a line item that has validation error on it and you convert it to a request, all we need to do is remember what the validation issue was on that item prior to moving it to a request, and provide that information to the operator or to the administrator when they're reviewing requests in advance. So try to streamline that process. Then, of course, there are other things that we're working on there's usually a list of things that we're working, smaller items that we're working on. And these are the ones I can speak to with some confidence. First of all, we're going to introduce the ability to edit the default policy values. So if you've got a policy value that a default setting, like the 5-minute turnaround time is probably a good example of that. We have a built-in 5-minute turnaround time. Everything has that. So at every level, you have to, at least at the organization level, you have to override that in every place. So if you have a different preference for something like that, the idea is that the giving you access to those global default policy values will help minimize the amount of overriding you need to do at the organization level. We will also see more contents tab improvements as things go on. I can't really speak to that. It's just something that we're trying to, we've always got our eyes on, is trying to make the contents tab more accessible and more useful to you as time goes by. But one of them that I will tell you specifically I plan on getting in there is the ability to filter items. So in the contents tab, I think it would be swell if you could ask it to just show you the RRT items, or just show you the by ID items, or give me a list of filtering by the name of something, or I don't know. We can come up with any number of possibilities, but I do think that is going to help with getting to specific problems and engaging with chunks of your workflow a little better. And then the last thing we're doing is we are listening for your feedback on requests. When you get requests and when you have requests, you integrate that into your operations. If you integrate it into your operations, please give us feedback. Tell us what's working. Tell us what's not working. Tell us what you think you can use it for that we haven't mentioned. So we will be accumulating that, and we'll see what we get, and we'll see what we can do with it. So that's all I have. And I guess I don't know this slide, but it's here.
Definitely don't need to reach out to sales to provide us feedback.
That's true.
So that's actually not necessary there. So, but thank you, Lee. Thanks for that.
Sure.
Informing us on what to expect this year. And Paul, your concern in the chat about students maybe using requests as a workaround. We know students are very smart, and they'll game the system for their advantage. And because of that, it is a policy setting. Meaning that you can set it on patron classes, or even policy classes. So if you do want to give that request option for, the upper level courses, or even faculty and staff only, you have that option there. So it's not a blanket setting at the checkout center. All right. Well, guys, it's got a very important slide here to show you. And it is our thank you slide. You guys, we saved the best for last. And the best part of Web Checkout is all of you, your customers, our customers. Thank you all so much for your question and your time today. We know it's a long day. We sincerely appreciate it. This event cannot happen without you. Please keep an eye out for the June 2024 release announcement. And we are planning to see you all in person this year, as Web Checkout is turning 25. That 25 in the background is not the age that I wish I was, but it's the age that Web Checkout is turning this year. It's been almost half of a decade, right? But if you have any questions on what we reviewed today, if you're interested in the Greenlighting development partnerships or connecting with one another, you can always email support@webcheckout.net, and we'll be sure to connect you to the right team member. If no further questions, thank you all again. Everything we do it for you. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you. Thank you all. I know you put a lot of time into all of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I'm here to bring you 3 corrections from the June 2024 webinar. Correction number 1, Samuel Powers. We said that he had a revoked certification. In this use case, where the course requires you to be recertified each year, his certification status should have just been inactive. Revoked is typically a punitive state. Inactive, you're no longer active for that time being. Make the difference between a revoked, punitive, inactive, it's no longer active. Correction number 2. If you plan to use the new requests feature in the June 2024 release, and you have made changes to your email templates, so you have custom email templates, you can make changes to your email templates to accept requests as early as any release version starting in the year 2021. So if you're on a version ending in 2021, 2022, or 2023, you can make edits to your email templates now before you upgrade. Again, if you are using just the default email templates or you don't plan to use requests, you don't have to make changes to your emails. Correction number 3 comes from yours truly. Webcheckout's turning 25, a quarter of a century, not a quarter of a decade. And that's it. Catch these bloopers live next time. Talk to you later.